Got it.
Yeah, it's on, so.
So, we have 3 agenda items for student achievement today. To look at the intermediate encore explore and elective update and information. To look at our social studies program renewal design report. That is kind of an item of if we're okay to move it to the board to be approved in April. So student achievement gets it first and then move it to April. And then I am going to do a little educator effectiveness update because I know we're looking at doing some policy and work around that. So I just want to situate you guys with kind of what we're legally responsible for doing, what does that look like, and then we can kind of go from there. So our first agenda item is the intermediate encore explore and elective update. Hopefully some of the board noticed that there have been some changes into the updates since the February posting. I will just add, we're not having a DIP update, an improvement plan update, because it's only been 2 weeks since our last achievement update and we're going into spring break. So there hasn't been too much work in the last couple of weeks here at school on the goal planning. Of course, we're still meeting and working on pieces of it, but nothing all that noteworthy. Okay, so as you know, one of our curricular review items is ACP planning, or academic, college, and career planning. And that is also a legal requirement. We'll find out more about that when I give you your full update. But a part of that is kind of giving kids an opportunity to kind of explore, find passions, find their interests, doing surveys and those type of things. The state of Wisconsin does use software for that. It's called Zello. And that's also what Arrowhead uses. So when I come back for the full ACP update, we'll be telling you more about what activities we'll probably be doing in Zello, what activities Arrowhead does in Zello as a little bit of a transition point between the K-8s and the 9-12s. So I've been here for a short amount of time, had to learn a lot about our Explore elective wheel that we had here at the intermediate school. And one thing I kind of noticed through preparing for our ACP work was really wanted to focus on giving our kids all the experiences to filter into Arrowhead's elective offerings. So what did we do really well? What were some areas and maybe some programming where we offered a little something, but maybe not that intensive of a course? And how can we better kind of help with that transition so when kids get to Arrowhead, they have a good idea of what they might want to take, because the great thing about Arrowhead is they offer pretty much everything. Now there's some things we can't do. We can't do an automotive course here, but certainly our new wing has really given us a great opportunity to kind of enhance some of those things. So what you'll notice is in 5th grade, there's only 2 opportunities. We really talked about this with the transition. We've heard quite a bit from parents between the transition from the primary school that kind of goes to an hour worth of electives a day, and they go to Phy Ed and art and music. How can we kind of transition kids to kind of more of the intermediate schedule? So you'll see that representative in our 5th grade. So PE is required, and so is music in 5th and 6th grade. Yet that's a state requirement. So that will be continued to be offered every other day. And then we're looking at 4 exploratory courses that are within the STEAM or kind of CTE lens, family and consumer ed, art, which is still a requirement as well in 5th and 6th grade. So you'll see those in there. And then really looking at the ACP focus of that will be on BizTown. But again, hopefully when we finish our ACP work, there'll be other transition activities within that course as well. So really just kind of helping on transition. Look, you're at, Merton Intermediate. Here's a whole bunch of more type of courses than what you would have had. Some are the same and some are different. And then of course in grades 6 through 8, you can see we kind of really opened up what we're offering for kids. As noted, if it was highlighted, I just want to note that at the bottom, yellow highlights show changes from the February Student Achievement Committee meeting, and blue highlights mean that the course stayed the same in different grade levels. As we've been working on the intermediate schedule, when teachers were available or not available, we had to move some of our potential Explore classes. So the main things that we kind of noticed we were missing from the transition piece to Arrowhead that we wanted to really put in is some strong computer science courses. So we were doing some like computer science with Lego robotics and some of our VEX work that we have in some of our other courses, but you'll see that there's a dedicated computer science project lead the way course, Innovators and Makers. And that is a little change from what we were recommending because we want to put another computer science course in the elective wheel too for 7th and 8th grade. So if the kids really like that experience and they really are into coding, and that would be app creators. So that's not noted on here, but just know we're still working on some of those electives, but that is the plan. The other main piece that we saw was on the biomedical side. Although Arrowhead doesn't have a for sure biomedical track, they offer a bunch in the area of medical sciences in their classes. So that really is helpful for kids that are interested in nursing, being a doctor, those type of things. And so we're recommending putting medical detectives in, which is a very strong PLTW course in there. And then of course we have the additional ACP classes and really worked a lot. I want to really appreciate Dave Wagner because we really worked out what his scope and sequence that he wanted to see that kids in the Explore experience. What did he want them to have in knowledge and skill set throughout the course of his 4 years of seeing them into kind of more of a capstone course, which he's calling mixed manufacturing. So kind of want to make sure he was using all of his spaces really well for that. So that's kind of a little bit of try to clear some language in here. Electives really meaning students will be able to choose whatever in there. Some questions came, how does music become an elective? It's because they can still choose in 6th grade, at least if they want band or choir. And then in 7th and 8th grade, it becomes a true elective that kids can pick. Exploratory, again, required classes that were meant to align to kind of some of that transition work to Arrowhead. Same with some of the electives. It's not that our elective course teachers are teaching band and choir and are not working on some of those transition pieces. And then encore just means additional required classes. For timing purposes, the one thing I would note to the board is this does represent going to every other day Spanish in grades 6 through 8, which is a change. That recommendation is sort of part of our world language review. But we're finding it with some of the changes that we had this year that it's getting a little harder to get through just level 1 worth of material with the time that's been accounted in our current world language program compared to what we had in the past. So I'm available for any questions that our Student Achievement Committee would have on this agenda item. You guys think I might not be done early.
Thanks, Maria.
Okay. So administration, just to clarify, we're going to go through and start working on some of those recommendations and changes. It really matters because for Project Lead the Way, we do have a training component into that. That occurs over the summer. So we want to make sure we give our teachers that will be teaching those PLTW classes enough time to not only enroll in them, but to kind of take some of that time on their summer schedule to register. All right. social studies and the 24-page report. I know you guys were enthralled by all the reading. I just want to start out and say I really appreciate everyone who was on the committee. As you know, having substitute teachers, which has been our past practice to have release time for teachers to do the curriculum renewal and design work, has not been able to happen this school year because we don't have enough substitutes to do that. So the teachers had to give up some of their professional learning time. And of course they were learning around social studies, but it often meant they had to catch up with their grade level team on what they worked on or other things, or they had to do some things that we gave teachers some time to take care of during that time. They had to take care of it on their own. So I just want to give a real shout out to the committee team members for hanging in there with me on some long professional learning days to get kind of the work done. So as you can kind of see from the layout of the report, kind of give you some background knowledge. I think it's really important to know what our current curriculum is, what we were teaching, what was kind of approved the last time the board did the work. Next, I kind of just went over the committee membership and organization. I think the most important piece to this is if you're watching online or you have available, you have access to this document online, which you do, all the links to all the meeting agendas and resources and things that we use are available to review there as well. So, you know, you have a really good kind of comprehensive look to everything that the committee kind of studied, looked for, read during their learning time. Our next section was kind of looking at our student data and program data analysis. You know, I will just kind of point out a couple things related to this to the board. Kind of in there, I put all the assessment changes in our state assessment system, really beginning with 2014. And I think that's really important because sometimes when we're looking at historical data, we forget that the state has changed their assessments multiple times or how it was assessed in that window. So I did kind of note what those changes were, because of course we had our traditional WKCE test that everyone might have remembered, the Wisconsin Knowledge and Concept exam. We went to the Badger. I do a little Badger face for that. You know, that was like a one-year show. That's all we had, 1 year of the Badger, before they changed to the Wisconsin Ford exam. And of course I have those dates there. And you might remember they did waive our testing in the 2020, spring of 2020. During the height of the pandemic when we closed schools back in March. So there were some schools that were like already started, just began testing, and some didn't. And the window had just opened in 2020 and they just stopped all assessments at that time. So you'll kind of see over in the data analysis how Merton has been since the last review is the data that I included in the report. And then I also included information since the last report that we had, even though I went back just a little bit, from Arrowhead and our feeder schools. And I put in there what courses our kids have in transition. I will do that in every report that we have here. My goal is really to help do a really good job in transition with Arrowhead, that I clearly understand when I review our stuff here, that I've talked and partnered with what's going on at Arrowhead, so I know what courses and opportunities our students have there. So our recommendations are based off of what we think would put our kids in the best position as they transition there. So you see, I mean, the biggest thing I would just note to the board is all the changes in Arrowhead over the course of time, as you'll see, even what they offered for 9th grade. And our students really only have 3 choices for 9th grade, which is, you know, a traditional social studies 9 class, a social studies 9 and English 9 combined block class, which is enriched for that. And of course, students do have the opportunity, which is very nice, to take their first advanced placement offering at Arrowhead as freshmen, AP Human Geography. It is primarily the only AP offering that AP recommends for freshmen at all. So Arrowhead does offer that, and kids can also take that opportunity. For some of the enriched and the AP Human Geography opportunity, the kids have to take that pre-ACT test as 8th graders and get certain scores. Again, they're recommended. It's not that they're going to tell you if you don't get those scores, you can't go in. but they give you some guidance about, you know, what would be convenient and best in the student's interest if they take that. All right. The next section is we kind of just talked about a guaranteed and viable curriculum and what did we find in our current curriculum of what we're offering. I had a whole presentation to the board on that, what that meant. So I'm not going to touch too much on that, and shared some survey data and insights that they have. On the next section, I kind of went through what are all the laws and state statutes related to social studies, specifically in the state of Wisconsin. I will just point out to the board, the second one on the report on page 25 is the new one that we needed to begin implementing for students beginning into next school year. The good news is Merton was already teaching that, but it is requiring, it was signed into law in April 2021, Wisconsin Act 30, which requires that the Holocaust and other genocides are taught within social studies. It needs to be at least taught once in grades 5 through 8, and we're teaching it in 8th grade here in our 8th grade curriculum right now, and at least one time again in grades 9 through 12, which of course we're not responsible for, but there it is. And it must be updated by July 1st of 2022, and it goes in effect for next school year. So that is the new kind of legal state piece that you might not be aware of. Yes.
What is the context of other genocides in our current curriculum and in our proposed curriculum?
The other genocides thing, actually, CISA in my meeting just today is asking for clarification from DPI on exactly what they want to see for that outside of just the Holocaust. There are some assumptions being made by schools that is relating to things that are happening, of course, in other countries. Not just in Jewish, but some things that are happening in some of our Middle Eastern countries right now. But we are asking for clarification, Phil. Yes. So I will answer that when I know. As often happens, they put a line and then they get specific when people are trying to put it in place. Yeah, Andrew?
So obviously, some of the pictures of the Holocaust or other genocides can be very graphic. How do we teach that, or how do we prepare kids? How does that work?
Great question. So Katie and Globig, and who teaches the 8th grade, along with Jay and I, helped craft a letter home with parents.
Okay.
So we let the parents know that we were teaching the Holocaust, what it is, how it can be, you know, upsetting. She shared her instructional materials if parents wanted to view that. So we did it ahead of time before the unit.
Okay.
It's treated it like a human growth and development topic.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's,
Except it isn't opted.
Except it's not up. Correct. We just wanted to make sure that they
Yeah.
knew exactly what we were going to teach.
And so parents can have conversations, or we want to know if it was upsetting
Right.
some parents, but I think Katie did a really good job. She shared all of her presentations. We didn't get heavy into photos as much as it was talking about narratives of people that were in there, you know, part of it, as well as, you know, information and factual.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right, so you also then see in the next section all the research that we kind of read and our teachers learning from that. And then I will say I put a whole section in here on critical race theory. I thought it was really important just to put it right into the report and how we're going to handle that. We definitely believe that we're following our board policy that the board has, 4019, the non-discrimination statement. So, you know, kind of using that as a guide of when we are looking at resource material, making sure that you know, it didn't have kind of any of those tenets that some people are concerned about that would be prevalent in some of the key ideas that are part of critical race theory. And I gave some updates on that. I would say, just for the board to kind of be considering, you know, as recently as February 22nd, our Wisconsin Assembly has passed the Parent Bill of Rights. Governor Evers have kind of already signaled that even if it passes through, it would be something that he would be looking to veto at this time. But I would just kind of put kind of that legislation out there, that of course, with fall election 2022, sometimes things that were in queue that didn't get passed or vetoed by the governor, depending on who's in office, sometimes can be fast tracked and be approved rather quickly. So we are busy kind of thinking about things that are in there and how it might impact schools. The biggest thing that I would just say, from my perspective, there's kind of a lot in that Parent Bill of Rights, but the main piece is really making your curriculum as transparent for parents as possible. So that's kind of the root of what it is, and also giving parents a little more opportunity potentially to opt out of different curricular pieces. And we're not sure how all of that could or couldn't be managed from the school perspective. So although we aren't seeing any legislative movement that is going to impact next school year, we do know that this could be something that impacts us in the future. And it's kind of around, it came out of the CRT work, and originally our state assembly kind of had a CRT type of bill that they kind of reworked into this Parents' Bill of Rights bill, which is why it's in this section. So as always, you know, everything is changing in our state fast. So it's part of my job just to kind of keep an eye on all those things as they come through. And then of course I did include, we looked at really two kind of key course programs that are kind of the top of the market programs. And I shared like the pros and cons and how all those looked, as well as how our teachers rated them. So we have kind of some primary program recommendations for the board. We're looking to implement inquiry journeys, kindergarten through 3rd grade. There are 3 units in inquiry journeys. We're looking probably of only doing 2 out of the 3 based off of our time and what we've already have in place with science. And those would be determined once we kind of can sit everyone K-3 in a room, because as you know, the standards have economic standards and behavior standards. So we're going to want to make sure that our kids in that range, if you remember, the standards were written K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, that we're covering a unit in each of those to make sure that we're covering our standards in those grade bands. We're going to continue with Wisconsin history in our current 4th grade text. We have the most recent text from the Wisconsin Historical Society, but we're really looking at just rewriting that curriculum to put more inquiry into that. And note that our teachers noted when they reviewed inquiry journeys was that it was a little weak on the assessment side. So we really are going to be bringing in some document-based questions, DBQs, to kind of get at some of those analyzing different text sets. And text for social studies means photos, firsthand accounts of historical perspectives. It's kind of primary sources. I'll use that word by talking about social studies. So DBQs would help kids write and kind of do more of the assessment pieces that our kids would be seeing on the forward. So we would be integrating that. So for the intermediate program, we would be continuing our inquiry journeys adoption in 5th and 6th grade. Bits and pieces of that, you'll kind of see more that's in there. What's nice about inquiry journeys is you can customize it for your district, for your units, for wherever you put them. So because 4th grade is staying with Wisconsin history, 5th grade will be teaching some of those units because they were traditionally US history units in a traditional scope and sequence. And we teach American history in 7th and 8th grade here. So we didn't want to do too much of that. So we are, and looking at the standards, we don't need quite that much history.
Is Wisconsin history required by the state?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to continue with the discovery textbook. We looked at a couple different options for that. Well, the state actually recommends that if we went with their whole scope and sequence for Wisconsin history, they would tell you over 3 years. Begin 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and then you do it align with American history. And our teachers thought that was just too much with what we had looking. That's their recommended. It doesn't necessarily show that in the standards. So we are comfortable making the recommendation, and I'm comfortable making the recommendation. Well, history overload.
It's always seems to be a disproportionately large amount of time spent on something. I guess that's the end of that sentence. It's disproportionate relative to all of social studies or all of human history.
Yeah.
And we spend an 1/8 of their time on Wisconsin history.
Yeah.
Always included. But anyway.
Yeah, but we're gonna hit our Native American requirement in that Wisconsin history class.
Hopefully that's improved.
Maybe, and so we're gonna stay with the textbook. So there isn't any changes significantly in 7th and 8th grade with the text. However, we are going to provide some professional learning on the online text. There's so much that we're not using in that can make it more inquiry based that we're really going to do together. And as you see, we're kind of staggering the implementation because it's really hard for our teachers to write 3 brand new grade levels at a time. So, and we have a different program and a new program. So we're looking to kind of do 6th and 7th grade next school year. Our 7th graders, where they end up in our program right now, we'll just have them finish out as 8th graders and bring in that new 8th grade piece the following year so they can finish up. And we're partly, thinking about the staffing side of that with Katie. So when she comes back, trying to pace the work a bit for her. And of course, we found the same weakness in journeys, and I would tell you same in discovery. Probably discovery has a little bit of a better assessment piece than our journeys does. So, but we're looking at doing some document-based questions as well, many small little things to get our kids kind of used to that. And then the last page is just a whole bunch of stuff that Maria's going to take care of with staff, which is just what are additional program recommendations. And of course, I'm really looking ahead, like even if the Parent Bill of Rights thing never happens, having a common curriculum template in this district that when teachers come, it's a common template regardless of what they teach. So we're going to be putting and designing those units in a common template. So with every review, we're going to be doing that, and then we're going to be able to post that for our families so they have a good idea of what we're teaching. Of course, we're going to update and publish our K-8 content overview for parents once that's decided. We're going to really work on high quality professional development in the new. The biggest shift, we went through those at a previous student achievement, is really not telling kids how, what to think in social studies, but to teach them how to think. And that means that it needs to be an inquiry framework, which is what our state standards and our C3 framework is. So we're really going to ensure that those places are in place, those type of teaching pedagogies in place, which requires some teacher training. And that's kind of a quick overview of what's in a very long page document. Do you have any questions, Katie?
Yeah, where it says continue to use current discovery textbook.
Yes.
7th and 8th, what does that mean?
So they're using the discovery text, they reviewed other textbooks and they still like it best. So they don't want to pick a new resource.
So the teacher just having the textbook, because I've never seen a textbook.
There is no physical textbook.
Yeah.
Yep, it's just
Okay.
an online textbook for
Yes.
the kids. Yeah, there is no physical. There's an online platform for the kids to
Okay.
continue to engage on, but there is no physical.
So it's just a textbook, but it's a digital textbook.
It's digital
It
textbook,
is.
yeah. They don't even offer a print version.
More and more vendors are going away from offering print.
Okay. So in that same framework, is that supplementing that online text with what? Am I hearing that correctly?
What number are you referring to? Can you tell me what you mean?
Just, because I know so much of what we do now is slides.
Yeah, so remember, that's the whole pedagogy shift that we're trying to do with social studies instruction, if that's what you're asking, yes. And our teachers already have ideas on that, they know they have to shift of what they're doing. We're heavy literacy, reading and writing focused, especially up here, and that will shift to more of an inquiry focus, and then, yeah. Right. So that wasn't about a text, it was about how we kind of designed it.
The changes we're making, if I remembered what you said earlier about K through third grade, we're changing to a different
Yes,
program.
yeah,
Maybe it was in there and I just missed it on
Yeah.
some pages.
Yeah.
But pros and cons, what did we really like better? What was there something drastically missing, or is it?
from our current.
Yeah.
If you looked, our current was a homegrown, so our teachers defined it itself, they used a lot of teacher-paid teacher resources. And it
Teacher
just,
what?
teacher-paid teachers, which is an online resource that teachers can go to get ideas and suggestions, and a lot came from that. So it was through analyzing our guaranteed and viable curriculum that we thought we had gaps, and it wasn't aligned to the standards, so it was better just to kind of freshen it up with a program that was better aligned. Good questions. And if you want to know the pros and cons of the program, that is near the end, it's like that front and back of what we looked at and what we liked and what we didn't like. Because there will not be anything perfect.
Yep.
And with social studies, we're going to have to go through every video, everything that we're going through again to make sure that we're comfortable with what's in whatever we purchase.
One of the arguments for having a lot of reading and writing in, well, social studies and I guess in general classes other than reading and writing, was that our kids needed more practice in those skills.
Yeah, nonfiction. Mhm.
So what, with going to an inquiry-based approach, which I'm not advocating against, I'm just wondering, the original theory was, oh, we need to push more reading and writing to social studies, to math, to science, to everywhere, so that they can practice that more. How does that thought process map to our new plan?
Good question. Literacy with the content areas is what we kind of have the word for that. It will always remain because, of course, a lot of either reading primary, there's still a lot of reading and writing in a lot of what we're doing in social studies and science in particular. I will just say we're going to be looking at 5-8 reading in language arts next school year, and the standards would be saying we should be at 55-45% as the percentages for the amount of literature versus nonfiction text in our core. So we're also, I will tell you, be beefing up because we're not at those percentages right now. So we'll be moving towards that, to balance that a little bit more in their core. And they're already working towards that. Actually, we have some mini units coming in because they had some longer block time in ELA in our upper grade levels this year. And we were putting in a mini kind of nonfiction types of units in with the remaining time that they found that they had, because they're finishing a bit early. Okay. Anything else on social studies? Okay, I'm super excited about it. I just have to tell you, look, this is like.
It was really nice that there was a big group that did that work. When we did this the last round, it wasn't, we always were doing multiple curriculums at a time. And this social studies wasn't like the main focus, right? I don't remember what we were pairing it with. The other, math or science, whatever it was kind of that's where we had all the teachers put all the, we had days and days of, professional development kind of stuff. Social studies kind of happened in the background with a smaller group of people. So it was nice that it was able to be a larger group and get more info.
Yeah. Thank you. We're totally excited about getting your nerd on and writing some great stuff. Because that's what I like to do.
So next steps, Maria, we have a discussion this evening, again, whatever the board would like to discuss. But if you do have any questions, our goal would be to move it forward for final approval for the board in April. So and, we can begin working towards the development plan and things like that too as well. So if you have any questions ahead of time, ahead of the next board meeting, please let Maria know. Because I don't think we probably aren't, are we bringing it back to student sheet? I don't think we were planning on bringing it back to student sheet. So.
Yeah, so if you have any questions or anything, my hope would be that it would be approved at the next board meeting in April. It's kind of approve it so I can. So April and I can work together at getting some training and do some ordering, which is yay. Okay. I wanted so know that that's 5:22.
I'm not telling you.
I'll ask lots of questions.
Don't rain on my parade. Don't rain on my parade. Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit about educator effectiveness tonight, because I just want to kind of tell you where the state is with this work, what's happening in the background, what's kind of required here in Merton. And I will say there's 2 links to the memo. One said educator effectiveness, what is required. So, you know, I'm going to be referring to that document. It has 6 kind of things on it. I'm going to overview, and then I'll kind of show you why I'm talking, where those 6 elements are when we talk about it. So first of all, a lot of this work spun after Act 10. When teacher evaluation was no longer a negotiated thing between teachers unions. So it was this timeline where the state put in the state law requirement, which requires all schools and charter schools, so anybody for the most part that gets state funding, to use the EE system. And I'm going to point, it's for teachers and principals. Specifically, that's what's in the language. So, you know, therapists, some other people that we might have on staff, nursing, guidance. It doesn't mean teacher contracts. So it means teacher and principal. So it doesn't mean we don't evaluate, but the legal requirement is specific on how. And it specifically says that all certified school personnel at the end of their first year and every 3 years after that has to have a formal kind of evaluation. What I would say is, think of it as a 3-year cycle. It doesn't mean like we're only looking at people every 3 years, and I'm going to talk through all of that. So that handout picked out what the 6 required components are. First, schools must provide orientation and training for educators and evaluators. We do that in our new teacher induction process. And before I arrived, that was done with the principals and of course done when the state clarified training. Evaluators must certify and provide ongoing monitoring of inter-rater reliability and agreement or collaboration. I'm going to talk, I have a whole slide on what is actually required for Ron on the principal piece and Jay and Becca on the teacher side to even be able to do that and what the requirements are for that. Evaluators must conduct the EE plan conferences, EE standing for educator effectiveness. Evaluators must conduct observations of professional practice in the summary year and supporting years of the EE cycle. Again, I'll show a graphic to give the board an idea of what that means. Educators must complete a self-review at the start of their summary year. And actually, that's true for all of their years in their educator evaluation plan. And educators must complete at least one student or school learning objective, SLO. We've talked about SPOs, which are school performance objectives, which are also allowable, and one professional practice goal. Okay, so that's yearly. So to help kind of give you a graph, I'm gonna go through a couple things, just vocabulary. And of course, if you click on the top of student achievement, I have this on our acronym list, because there's a lot in this right now. We have EEPs, which is the Educator Effectiveness Plan. It includes the teacher's or the principal's self-review, their student learning objective, and their professional practice goal. SLO stands for student learning objective. And they are to be SMART goals, regular SMART goals of how they produce. Professional practice goals are a little different. They stand for PPGs. And that is really a goal around what do they want to grow in and be better around their pedagogy. So one is really about student and monitoring student progress, right? And how is what I'm doing in the classroom impacting students? And the other one is kind of about my pedagogy. You know, I like to say one's the science of teaching and one's about the art, the pedagogy, and what that looks like in their practice. Districts do have a choice of using a tool called Frontline. And it was called different things, so they're all listed up there. You can also use Google Docs, which the state provides, which is what Merton has been using for the last several years. Part of that was because when it was rolled out the first year, the technology was awful. I'm not even gonna evaluate, like horrendous, like no one wanted to touch it. It was not easy software for teachers to use, evaluators to use. And it has been much different and farther along, but Merton is not unique that they went from the Google Forms route because it really was not great. Teachscape is what is the evaluators of teachers must complete the training. I just really want to highlight to you that training takes before 40 and 60 hours for JM Becca to complete, to even be able to use on the Danielson framework. And they have to pass a 4 to 6 hour test. We had plenty, you know, you can retake it if you have to. You only have a certain number of times that you can retake that from someone who is also certified, which is me, which is what you should expect. And Ron, we can tell you it's a lot of work, and that's providing the calibration that they talked about. So it's not that just anybody can evaluate teachers in our system. And Teachscape is, and Ron was very gracious to pass on, and there was logins to me. And what are they evaluated on? Most important, I have a little video I'm going to be sharing, but it's called the Danielson Framework for Teaching. And it was created by Charlotte Danielson, a huge research project. It's a 4-level rubric that has satisfactory, basic, proficient, and distinguished, and it contains 4 domains and 22 components. Why all the training has to happen. Because there's a lot that principals are looking for. So thinking about the process, you see my numbers there. The numbers represent the 6 required things that DPI had that I shared with you at the very beginning. So you see where all six of those come in. But basically, if you're starting with the plan in the green, there's an orientation meeting. So these are for people in their summer year. I'm gonna tell you, have an orientation meeting for new teachers. That's gonna happen at new teacher induction. We talk about educator effectiveness and how it works here in Merton. Then all teachers complete a self-review. They work on their educator effectiveness plan that again has an SLO and PPG in, and they have a planning session with the principal. So all teachers do the EE plan. The principals actually sit down and talk through those plans in the educator effectiveness conference with new teachers and summer year teachers. The next piece that they do are really evidence collection and ongoing improvement. So principals, Ron to principals, observe teachers teaching. We are taught in our calibration of 40 to 60 hours what evidence collection is and how you take that evidence. We actually take it to all 22 components in the Danielson framework for each evidence statement that we collect. And that happens kind of, I would just say throughout. But it's not like just sit down and give a little feedback. That's not what Buck and Jay do when they're collecting evidence. Then you see there's the mid-year review, which means all teachers look at their educator effectiveness plan. How am I doing on my SLO? How am I doing on my PPG? Do I need to make some changes or revisions? Have my kids already met the goal? And what does that mean and how do I grow them? Again, in the process, goes to then what happens last in the act, which is end of the cycle conversation. Goals, look at where they are and how did they go. So that's kind of like the cycle that happens for, again, all of our teachers and principals in educator effectiveness. I like this graph, I'm not going to reiterate, but it kind of tells you what happens in months. So the same information. Wisconsin is changing some of the forms next school year. So we have to do an educator effectiveness restart here because things are going to look different. So we're talking administratively if we want to change to the state platform instead of using Google Docs. But I share this because also we're going to be providing time for our educators to do some of the work that you see is required of them in their process. So where does Jay and Becca and Ron collect evidence? So there's requirements on how often we have to do that. This is the state slide, and I'm going to also put it in how Merton calls things. People that are in summer year, again, every 3 years, gets an announced observation. Here we call it a formal observation. That requires you meet with the teacher before, you observe, and you meet with the teacher after. It's announced, meaning we plan it with the teacher. We have to, because we're meeting before and we're meeting after. For new teachers, we also do that a couple times in their first year. Then we have something that the state calls mini observations. They're short windows, 15 to 20 minutes, where Jay and Becca are collecting evidence. We call them informal observations here. That is, the teacher doesn't know when the principal's coming to collect the evidence and the documentation at that time. And as you see up there, in summer year, there's 2 of those that you do it. And then for the supporting year, when a teacher isn't in their summer year, they have to do one of those, either in the teacher's, the other 2 years when they're not on summer. Classroom walkthroughs continue to happen. Those are quick things, check-ins with teachers, kind of seeing how things are going. Again, an evaluator can choose to collect evidence, bless you, on any of those topics in there. Most of the time, a chunk of the evidence collection really happens in the announced or mini observations or a formal or an informal. And then artifacts is the other place. And partly because, and I'll share a slide here with the Danielson domains, some of the domains are things that are observable in classrooms and some things are not. So teachers provide artifacts or information to kind of help with the rating in those. So here's what the Danielson framework looks like. Those are the 22. We've got domain 1, planning and preparation. So you can kind of see what that looks like. I'm not going to read everything from 1A to 1F. But that's all around what we expect teachers to do in preparation for teaching. Again, that's very artifact-based. That happens in the pre-observation conference. Sometimes if we're wondering how a teacher's doing, are they really doing a lot of intentional planning around something, you know, they might upload lesson plans, they might upload small group forums to show that they're really doing a good job at planning and preparation. Domains 2 and 3 are the ones that are most observable to Ron, myself, Becca, Jay, and that's the classroom environment, one being about the spacing and classroom behaviors, how are students doing, is there mutual kindness and respect within classrooms, and domain 3, which is all about instruction, you know, and the key things that we're working on. And then domain 4 is something also that's heavy on the teacher artifact side, but we do sometimes, you know, observe behaviors in team meetings and other places that we might take evidence to that, but that's really on the professional responsibilities. Teachers get their report cards done on time. Are they working with their colleagues and peers? Are they showing professionalism? Are they growing? When we coach them, are they taking the feedback and putting it into practice? So I think this is really good for the board to understand. This is how we in the state of Wisconsin approach the work. This isn't something we can talk about and just say like, oh, I don't want to worry about professional responsibilities. Jace, just don't even score people or worry about that. Like, we don't have that luxury. So you see, like, it's intensive. That's why it's 40 to 60 hours to learn what we're doing into practice. Here's a little definition on what each of the levels are. I would tell you from Charlotte's perspective, and I've seen her many times, the majority of teachers are proficient is where we would like to see them. Distinguished in the Danielson Rubric is a place I like to say people visit, but they don't live. And the reason why is when you really get to know the rubric, students, agency, and student running of the classroom are kind of the difference between 3 and 4 educators. Most of, like I said, proficient is exactly like, and people, that's a mind shift for teachers because we like praise. We want to all be distinguished. But when you read and actually look at the Danielson, you'll see the words students do, students. It's less about me as a teacher. It's what students are independently doing because they have owned their learning more than the teacher. It's kind of like the students are working harder than the teacher in a lot of the domains. Again, that's not true for all of them. That's certainly true on the instructional part and the classroom part. More of our teachers can show distinguished in the area of planning and preparation and professional responsibilities through some artifacts. But for the most part, the hallmarks between a 3 and a 4 are really around those behaviors.
So we're getting to level 4. How, then it seems like a lot of the success of any given teacher would be predicated on the success of the grade before them. If it's a lot about student, student taking, initiative or whatever your phrasing was. I don't remember it.
Student agency.
Yeah, right, because I mean, that's something that would happen over a student's entire career. Right, like how, I guess maybe like how much ability does, a 7th grade teacher, if they're given a bunch of kids that are need extra help or, out of control classroom or whatever, like how much, like, it seems like a lot of the ability for someone to be from 3 to 4 would be based on the class that they happen to get, I guess. Is that not true? Or maybe I don't understand.
I would say a teacher that has a certain classroom environment and culture that they develop early in their classroom can really leverage them to be 4 distinguished teachers in certain parts of that rubric. Because it's all about kind of how you manage your classroom. And when I think of myself as an intermediate teacher, I'm thinking about my experience at Big Bend Elementary where I was a new teacher and I got like a challenging group of kids and a school board member's kid and a couple other random kids in there. And the culture and the environment that I set and the expectations that I had of all of them and the relationship I developed that actually propels them to want to be independent learners. So I think it's not all based off of that, or would be in the rubric. Certainly it can help.
Yeah, but Phil, I would say from my experiences, having multiple classrooms, very, one classroom dynamic is going to be very different than another. So you're right, I may not be able to completely dominate and live in 4.
Sure.
I want to live in 3, and then ultimately, if I do have a group of kids, over time, and hopefully you're able to mold them, you may have to, there's times when you have to go back to 2, just given the situation, based on the rubric. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to walk in and see 2. Sure. Based on what's happening, and again, it could be a mini observation, it could be for 15 minutes. If you're observing a mini lesson, you may not even see, or there might not be an opportunity for a 4 in your small 10-minute observation or whatever it might be. And that's why they do multiple observations to create a preponderance of evidence too as well. But we would like to think that that teacher has a lot of influence regardless of where they came from, whether they're new to our organization or whether they came through and they were in Jay's class and now they're in my class, or my class to Jay's class. And that's why common expectations are really solid. Yep, actually, we'd like to.
All right, anyway.
So I have, I'm not showing the whole video at a certain amount of time, so I want to double check what they want on Charlotte to talk a little bit more about like some of her rubric and information, so.
About learning, student learning. Cognitive scientists don't agree on everything. There is one thing they do agree on. It has to do with the nature of learning. And it's this, and we can say it in one sentence. Learning is done by the learner through an active intellectual process. It seems so obvious that it's even dumb to say it, but we sometimes overlook that. And sometimes we think that when we're engaging with teachers around what they do, we're interested in what they're doing. But actually, what the teachers do in their practice is reflected in what the students do. And so when I observe in a classroom, I of course care what the teacher's doing. I really care what the students are doing. What's the nature of the task we're asking them to do? What is the intellectual rigor? What is their cognitive engagement? What is their engagement with one another? That's where the learning happens, and that's the contribution of cognitive science to our work as teachers. So that's a very important assumption, and it plays out all over in the framework. The centerpiece of the framework for teaching, as you almost certainly know, is 3C, the engaging students in learning. That's the heart of it, the core of it. The other components support that. So that's the big assumption about learning. The big assumption about teaching has to do with that teaching is enormously complex work. That teachers make, literally, people have counted this, hundreds of decisions a day. Often under, I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, unfavorable circumstances, like in a hurry, right? Or based on incomplete information. And so we've always known that teaching was demanding physical work. You run around a lot, you're up and down this school, you could, be on the track team, right? Just getting from one place to the other. I mean, it's demanding physical work. It's very demanding emotional work. But here's what we have discovered as a profession a little bit more recently, that it's also challenging intellectual work. That, in other words, teaching is a thinking person's job. And so any definition of teaching has to reflect these two things about both teaching and learning. That it's demanding intellectual work and purposeful work, and that it's also that I define teaching as that which causes learning, and we know that that which causes learning is active intellectual engagement. So then when we get to these components then, they're not just a list of things, they are related to each other in a couple of interesting ways. And again, at the risk of repeating things that you know, I'll just observe that domains 2 and 3 happen in the classroom, you can see them. Domains 1 and 4 are equally important to good teaching, but they happen behind the scenes, sort of right there off stage. That domain 1 in planning and preparation, domain 4, all the other professional responsibilities are critical to good teaching, but you never see them. You might see indirect evidence of planning in the classroom, but you don't see it the way you would see the components in domains 2 and 3. So there's that. Let me say a couple of things also that sometimes people look at these and they say, well, this is okay, it's framework, but you're missing some things. And to say, where's technology? Has that gone missing? Where's high expectations? Those are aspects of teaching that I call common themes. And they are not components of teaching, not because they're not important, they are, but because they don't describe the work of, you see, the framework for teaching, the components describe the work of teaching, what teachers do. The common themes, and there are things like high expectations, equity, culturally responsive teaching, etc., use of technology, those reflect not what teachers do, but the manner in which they do what they do. So, for example, a teacher who holds high expectations for student learning, let me see if I can make this work, those high expectations are reflected in the outcomes they set, right? Or the questions they frame, the high cognitive level, or the feedback they give to students, and so on. That is, the high expectations play out through the components, as does something like.
Okay, so my hope is you heard a little bit from Charlotte about the assumptions that when we're collecting evidence, we're often collecting not, when we're observing, our evidence isn't just what the teacher's doing. It's often around the cognitive work of what students are doing, what they're learning, what their choices are. And I just thought that was important for you to kind of hear where her research was and where she was headed with that. So what are the requirements for Jay, Becca, Ron, and myself? 40 to 60 hours of online training for original certification. The practice assessments are mandatory, and you have to pass 2 tests, 5 to 6 hours. Those tests take. You do get an opportunity to redo them, I think up to twice, if you didn't quite pass the first time. And then we have recertification every 4 years, which means, again, you decide how much you need to go back on for that online training. Now, I say if you're using the tools well and the Danielson framework well, I didn't on recertification because I was observing teachers and collecting evidence. I was familiar with the framework, and I didn't have to spend a lot of time recalibrating and going through the online training. And again, I took a couple practice assessments and I thought, oh, Maria's still good. I got that. That's good. And then again, had to pass 1 test that took between 3 and 5 hours. Again, all of that to do the cycle of collecting evidence. That's that one little piece and portion. And just to give you an idea of what kind of time it takes from our administrative team to do educator effectiveness, I kind of put some like little time up there. For roughly for the educator effectiveness plan, so self-review, SLO and PPG, all years, educators have to do that, in the beginning, middle, and end of the year. For most time, we'll be putting that in our professional development schedule moving forward. So we're hoping not to take educators' time outside of what they have. The educator time to complete that though is around 6 hours. Hopefully 3 hours kind of the beginning of the year for some time for them to go for goal writing when we have to hit the new forms that are coming out from the state. next school year. And for the administrative team, if they're summary and new teachers, because remember, they have to have meetings with them. And they have to have them in the beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of the year, you can see is about 6 hours. And again, these are just anticipated about time. A full observation in DPI language or in Merton language, we will call that a formal observation for teachers, 2 times a year, summary year 1, supporting year 0. These are minimum requirements, we can do more. So I'm just gonna say that this is the minimum requirements. For educator, per time is around 3 hours because of the pre and the post observation forms, and the meeting that they have to complete, and then the meetings that they have to have. So when you're thinking about administrative time, they have 2 hours for the pre and post test, an hour for observation, and I say about an hour to go through all the evidence and to take it to the 22 domains and pieces. The mini observations, or what we call the informal observations, yearly. The educator doesn't have any requirement in that case, but administratively, again, 1 hour of probably for the administrator for observation, taking evidence in the feedback form, and 2 hours for all new teachers and summary teachers. And then the end of cycle, again, I kind of have what that would look back. At end of cycle, that's for some of your new teachers. Every one of those domains need to be scored based on the preponderance of evidence that have been collected over the 3 years, or in the new teacher over the year. So what does that kind of mean? For our team, for new to the district teachers, they spend about 14 hours probably on all of their planning and work. And for our administrative time, it's about 20 total hours. So when you think if you have 8 new teachers, you multiply that roughly about 20 hours, you know how much of our administrators' time is just meeting educator effectiveness requirements. Summary year teachers, so those are teachers that have been in the district on their 3-year cycle. They have about 10 hours of time and about 16 hours because there's 1 less observation in there about. And then supporting years teachers really working on that EE plan is about 6 hours, and administrative time is usually 1 hour because if you remember, they have to do 1 informal observation somewhere in the teacher's supporting years. Done. So are there any questions? I just really wanted to make sure that student achievement had a really good understanding of what we look at in educator effectiveness, what's required, and how much capacity and time it takes both on the educator side and on the administrative side. And it's not just something anybody can do, because when we, oftentimes when we're talking about what makes a good teacher, what we're looking at, I want everybody to understand we're looking at those domains. That's how we define them. We don't just define it if they do a really good relationship with kids. That matters, but that's one part in one part of a domain. We're looking at other things. Questions from student achievement committee members only because it's a committee meeting.
Just a congratulations for getting done 5 minutes early.
That's why we started 15 minutes early.
Thank you.
So, Maria, thank you very, very much. Really.
How common is Danielson model in the rest of our country?
Very.
Wisconsin uses, but.
Wisconsin, there is also one alternative approved model called the strong model that's out of CC6 that you can use. Very similar though, the process is the same, it's just they use a different framework. Very popular, a lot of states and a lot of districts use the Danielson framework. Partly because the training is so intensive, it really helps with collaboration. And we'll be doing things locally to work on collaboration. Becca, Jay, I will go and observe and see, do we collect the same evidence? Will we score the person the same way?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
We'll with a student showcase from Merton Primary School. Ms. Stein, I'll let you kick it off for us.
Yeah, so I will invite my by my first grade teachers down and students. Come on down. We're here to highlight some of the stuff that we've been doing within the classroom and how does it really apply to what a early learner looks like and sounds like. The staff has been really working diligently on meeting in small group, conferring, and also making sure that students have these personal goals. So that's really important. And then like what just before us, the presentation was all about that it's really important that students know what they're learning. So when I come in for an observation, I might go to one of the students, tell me what you're learning. Why is this important? Those are some of the questions because I'm really looking at the learner to assess whether or not the learning is happening within the student. So I'll let everyone introduce themselves and take it away because you're the stars. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting us to share what's going on in the first grade classrooms. The kids, well, I'll start with saying I'm Elise Bly, first grade teacher.
I'm Kelly McCord, I'm not a first grade teacher.
I'm not a first grade teacher.
Ashley Bartlett, Natalie Dunbar.
First grade, as you can tell, we're all first grade teachers. The kids today are going to be sharing their goal sheets and the individual strategies that they have been learning in order to achieve those goals in reading and writing. So they've been working really hard and they're very excited to share with you. And what's great about these goals and strategies is they really help us meet the individual needs of the children and support their growth where they are. And they're really excited to share what they have been working on.
I believe we're going to start, and I have my fabulous student Ava Dwalski here, and she's going to share with you her reading strategy goal card and talk you guys through what her individual goal is, and then some of the strategies she has learned to meet that goal, and then what it looks like in her reading response journal.
Hi, my name is Ava Tuwalski, and I am in Mrs. Dunbar's first grade classroom. My goal is to get to know my character when reading fiction books. I have learned many strategies to do this. Some examples are tracking. Tracking characters' feelings, using what's in the bubble to infer what characters might be thinking and thinking what my character realizes or learns at the end of my story. Let me show you some of my thinking I've collected in my reader's notebook. I use this to collect my jobs. In the book, Mr. Player and Taffy Pick the Players, I used the strategy, what's in the bubble. I got to know my character by jotting what the character was thinking. I also thought about how the character was. Here are a few of my jobs.
So after reading and flagging as she's reading the book, at the end, we pull them all out. And she gets to kind of collect her thinking, so we don't just like trash all the Post-its. And then this is a way where I can also have time to connect with her and have conversations and see if she is actually utilizing the strategy. So here are a couple of her jobs. So you're doing the what's in the bubble jobs, right? So here are a couple of her what's in the bubble. So she would turn to say this page, when she knew the character was having a big feeling, she'd stop to think, what might my character be thinking?
Will the peers ever get down?
And how is he feeling?
Sad.
Okay, so he was thinking, will the pears ever come down? Okay, the next one.
Oh, I hope I have exciting stuff in my garden.
What was he feeling? Oh, he was feeling hopeful. Okay.
No. Am I gonna get there first before someone else gets there?
Very good. That is her.
I brought along with me Cody Willie today, and we're going to talk about our writing goal sheets.
Hi, my name is Cody Will, and I am in Ms. Bartlett's first grade classroom. I have been working on opinion writing. My goal is elaboration. I elaborate to get my readers to agree with me. I have learned 30 strategies so far to help me achieve my goal. They are example expert opinions and quotes. Here is examples where I used my strategies in my writing piece.
So similar to her, Cody has a writing sheet. So in group, we learned different strategies along the way, and those are the 3 that he's added so far. So he's just gonna read 2 pages from his book where he used a quote and then some expert opinion.
I think this dinosaur is the best because it has the best color. I like the color green and gray. Those 2 colors are my favorite 2 colors.
So we use some expert opinion words on that page, and now he's going to read a page where he got a quote from a classmate to prove that I'm not the only one who thinks this. I also have other people who agree.
Some people might think the T-Rex is the best, but I think the Spinosaurus is the best dinosaur because the Spinosauruses have sharp teeth. I like sharp things. Ethan said I like the pointy teeth.
Awesome, great job.
Sure. Hi, my name is Zane, and I am in the high school classroom. I have been working on opinion writing. My goal is word choice. I have learned 3 strategies so far to help me achieve my goal. They are being precise, more clear, and using hyperbole. Here is my writing so far.
Right. So should we show them your goal sheet first? Okay. Where's your goal sheet? Turn it around so they can see.
I'm writing word choice, and instead of using it's heavy, you could use this backpack weighs a ton.
That's like be silly and dramatic, right? All right. So you.
Kobe, you know he died, but he's better than Giannis because Kobe could shoot 1,000 more away, and Giannis could only just do a layup. Kobe is way better at shooting 3-pointers. Giannis misses. Kobe hits like 60 or 50 feet. Kobe shoots 4-pointers. He gets a 5-pointer again. Giannis misses it again in his 3-1. Kobe steps back and shoots. Kobe crosses Giannis, misses the glass. Next, when you go to a game, tell Giannis you're not better than
What did you say in writing today? We better not.
You better not tell me honest.
Thank you, Faye.
My name is Lauren, and I am in Mrs. McCord's first grade classroom. I've been working on a plan. My goal is to elaborate to convince my reader to agree with me. I've learned 3 strategies so far to help. They are adding details to my reasons, talking back and using spoken word. Here's an example of my strategy.
So here's her goal sheet. So she is also working on elaborating. So not just listing her reasons, but then further explaining her reasons to really convince her reader. And in the part that she's sharing, she's actually going to share where she added her details, she used sparkly words, and she talked back to the reader.
The second reason I love them the best is you never know which one you are going to get. Some people like surprises. I think it's more exciting when you don't know what you're going to get. Getting an envelope reminds me of my birthday. I never know what's in my presents. I always want to open my envelope. And this is how I feel like envelopes are an amazing surprise. Hi, my name is Connor, and I am in Miss Monroe's first grade class. I have been working on opinion writing. My goal is spelling. It's important to write all the sounds that you hear. In words, so others can read my writing. I have been working on 3 strategies to help me achieve my goal. Looking on the snap word wall to spell out snap words, syllable spelling, and using my research sources to spell out words. Here is an example where I used my strategies in my writing piece. Then is the stuffy that I was born with. I love him like anything else. If something happened to him, I would be heartbroken. I pet him, I love him very much. He means the world to me. He's my life. I could not live without him. He's everything to me. He's very soft and very snuggly. I love him so much. If anything happened to him, I would die.
Does anyone have any questions for either our teachers or our expert learners here?
Zane, what about Michael Jordan?
You like my Jordan?
Well, Kobe.
Any other questions? So one thing you'll notice is that there's an array here of different topics, and that's one of the choices and voices that we provide for our students. And it's one of the things that the staff continue to grow to, that students, if it matters to them what they're writing, they'll write even deeper, more complex about it. So excellent job. I'm so proud of everyone up here. So nice work.
for you, and thanks so much for coming on in, because what I heard today was just, you know, we're gonna think, we're gonna try to know what people are thinking, we're gonna build arguments, we're gonna use great words, we're gonna continue to elaborate, we're gonna be great spellers as well, so thank you very, very much. Students, families, thanks so much for coming on out, and bringing us here too, and staff, thanks so much for being here as well. So we have a simple for you.
Let's see our time. Thank you. Zane? And huge thank you also to all of our first grade teachers. The work you're putting in really shows that it's just really impressive.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, no.
That's okay. I know where I know where it's. I got it. I accepted my
So we're gonna start out with our community forum, which is an open forum dialogue between anybody in the audience of the board. Is there anybody that would like to speak at the community forum? And still nobody online? With that said, then we will start the meeting. Start with the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So we need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second in discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes. Approval of the minutes for Monday, February 28th, 2022, and Monday, February 28th, 2022. First meeting at 5, second at 6:40.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of Monday, February 28th at 5 p.m. and Monday, February 28th at 6:40 p.m.
In a second. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approval of financial report and bill listing.
Make motion to approve voucher listing dated February 21st, 2022, March 6th, 2022. Starting with payroll, the direct deposit number 900056386 through 900056495, $147,943.96. Wire transfer number 202100248 through 202100263 in the amount of $151,314.23 for total payroll of $299,258.19. Accounts payable check number 55156 through 55177 in the amount of $14,393.88. Just note that checks number 55123 and 55135 were voided. AP wire transfer 202100254 through 202100254 in the amount of $19.37. Wire transfer 202100255 in the amount of $7,729.19. Credit card transactions 22022 in the amount of $46,710.61. For total accounts payable of $68,853.05 for total disbursements of $368,111.24. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We are on to district administrators report. Oh, my fault, absolutely. Delegations to be heard. First, we have Joyce. Me, do you get to start?
All right, hi, I'm Joy Bontrack. I teach second grade currently. I'm also a parent of 3 students at Merton and 1 at Arrowhead, and I just wanted to show my support for our SEL curriculum. And from a personal standpoint as a parent, my youngest is in 3rd grade and struggles with a lot of these social and emotional type of behaviors, both at school and at home. And she is coming home and using the strategies that she's learning. She's pulling them out when I'm not using them. Hey mom, belly breath, name what you're feeling. Within my classroom this year, I've noticed the kids using the problem solving strategies and the belly breaths and all of the things. And I think right now in the world we're living in, our kids are going through things that they don't know how to process. As adults, we don't know how to process some of it. And I just think that now more than ever, we need something like this in our school. Because if our kids, our students, our own children are not socially and emotionally okay, the other stuff doesn't matter, in my opinion. When they are socially and emotionally not okay, we see them shut down in the class. If they're shut down, they're not learning anymore. So I just want to show my support for Merton continuing with the SEL program.
Thank you. Next we have Jackie.
I just sit here, okay. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of sort of the same as Joy, but also just help shed a little light on sort of the purpose behind how we got to this point, I guess. So the question raised of do we feel there should be school time taken, universal? You know, I can't do this. Instruction around social emotional learning. So just to kind of go back a little bit to the SEL committee. So in the discussions during the early stages of the SEL committee, we did sort of a district analysis of where social emotional learning was taking place throughout the district. We discovered there are many places where the skills and concepts were being taught,
like in gym class, teaching cooperation, resolution, conflict resolution, and social thinking in some classrooms, and all over the board, it was everywhere. So we decided as a committee that it was our priority moving forward to implement something that was evidence-based, to provide us as a district with common language and consistency. I completely understand and support the idea of integrating these skills into parts of the day where they naturally fall during group work, recess, center time. And these times present opportunities to reinforce and practice. However, the teaching itself needs to be consistent across classrooms, intentional and preventative. These skills do not necessarily grow on their own. They need to be developed over time with attention and rigor. Our students spend 7 hours a day here, surrounded
by peers and interacting with peers all day. And the ability to manage emotions. Oh.
Sorry, okay, here we go. Manage emotions, maintain relationships, and practice responsible decision-making cannot be underestimated
as we work to create an optimal learning environment.
Another purpose of the universal SEL curriculum, as discussed by our committee, was to support our district vision. Many of the vision statements are closely linked to the SEL competencies. In particular, develop healthy children who live the values of the district, promote a staff and student culture that encourages exploration, risk-taking, resilience, and responsibility, and provide a secure and inclusive and engaging educational and work environment. The work of our committee was also to support the Department of Public Instruction's visions, every child to graduate, college and career ready. So directly from DPI, we want all students in Wisconsin to graduate from high school academically prepared and socially and emotionally competent by processing and demonstrating knowledge, proficiency in academic content, skills, application of knowledge through skills such as critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, habits, behaviors such as perseverance, responsibility, adaptability, and leadership. These proficiencies and attributes come from rigorous, rich, and well-rounded public school experiences. So I appreciate the opportunity for discussion and to helping kind of be able to explain the why behind the current universal curriculum. Thank you, everybody.
Next, Lindsay.
Well, I keep my thoughts brief, because I know I spoke last month as well. I hope you enjoyed some of the articles I thought were stellar. So kind of what I want to touch on is I just want to make sure I emphasize the point that what we are here as a collective whole for, and the others who have joined online, is to promote that we want to keep universal SEL. No one here is going to say that we shouldn't be reviewing our curriculum, looking at second step itself, looking at implementation. That's all part of a reflective growth mindset process. We're all for it, right? We want to be doing the best of the best. So if there's something better, we're for it. What we're not for is removing what is essential to our students' development on a daily basis. The number of kids who on the outside, you see them outside, you think, oh no, they don't need it. Everyone needs it. There's so many kids, there's kids at the high school level, there's adults. We all need it and we feel very strongly about it. And we have a responsibility to provide the best opportunities to every child that comes through our door, and SEL is one of those opportunities every child deserves. We know they're getting it at home, they should be, that's great, but they also deserve to get it here, and we feel very strongly that as people who care about them, they deserve to have our full attention at all times, no matter what aspect of their life it is, whether it's academic, social, or emotional. So that's all I'll say for today.
Thank you. Next, Phil.
So I'm not necessarily brave enough to share my own feelings or experiences, but I did offer to a friend of mine to read what she wrote. So Mrs. Iwanski sent the board a letter, but I thought it was very well written and wanted to make sure that everyone here was able to hear it, that it was on our recording. To whom it may concern. When I was 7 years old, I had the unfortunate experience of answering the door to find a policeman standing there. They asked to speak to my parents, and before I knew it, my kitchen table was surrounded by officers. My sister, brother, and I were sent to our rooms not to be a part of the adult conversation. Later, I would find out that they were there to inform my parents of the suicide of a family member and the accompanying homicide of his wife. They lived just 2 doors down the block in a tight-knit neighborhood. This was my first memory of talking about mental health with my parents, and also the first funeral I attended following a suicide. When I was 11, I was put through my first intruder drill as a student at Merton School. I remember Sarah Kasperowitz huddling us in the corner of what is now the STEM computer lab. I hid inside the bottom of the podium and held my breath, thinking that even breathing too loud could give me away my whereabouts. We were assured it was just practice. Later in my Merton career as a student, I was interviewed about a hit list that a student had created. The school investigated the level of threat and what the students' connections were to other people, and I realized that our suburban community was not exempt from the dangers of individuals who feel isolated, unseen, and bullied at school. Throughout my life, I have been sat down multiple times so that a suicide attempt of a family member, a friend, or an acquaintance can be explained to me. Each time that conversation was accompanied with a strong parental support from my own home and the strong message that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to talk about it, no matter what it happened to be. When it comes to mental health, I think that my family was ahead of the curve with normalizing the conversation. I was glad when the rest of the world started catching up and normalizing the conversation of mental health, mattering as much as the physical maintenance of the rest of our body. The most recent suicide funeral I went to happened in January of 2020. It was a former classmate from my days as a Merton school student and a child of a former Merton school board member. His parents are amazing people. His parents created a home that provided everything during his childhood. He was raised with good parenting. Unfortunately, a childhood of support wasn't enough to change the outcome of his adult life. On February 28th, Lindsay Kent suggested during the student achievement meeting that the SEL curriculum be taken into conversation for removal from our curriculum to free up time for additional academics or the introduction of Spanish. The idea was also put into place that it became a parent choice. The idea that SEL is a parent's job was also stated by an unidentified male voice at 49 minutes, 18 seconds on the video. I wanted to support those two people for the positive parenting of their children and the handling of the topics in their home. It isn't an easy task to take on, to truly create a safe space for any child with any potential truth, to have a space to share their struggles, thoughts, and feelings with a level of unquestionable support. Thank you for creating that home for your children. I write to you in hopes that you consider an alternative view. No matter what the safe space you create in your home is, your children spend the majority of their waking hours outside of that home in a school environment. No matter what the safe space is that you create in your home, your children are surrounded by hundreds of students every day whose home lives you don't control. No matter what the safe space you create in your home, your children will someday leave your home and need to be able to create relationships with others that are safe and trusting. No matter what the safe space is that you create in your home, it might not be enough. SEL curriculum isn't a replacement for good parenting. SEL curriculum is a continued education for those that are already getting great support at home and a chance to transfer those skills into a school environment, to practice with different peers and create strong relationships with additional adults. More positive and safe relationships for your student is not a negative thing. It should be our mission as parents to grow children who can be part of a community bigger than themselves. It should be our mission as educators to grow children who are inclusive, acknowledged, aware, and responsive to their own feelings and those around them. Those two missions are not separate. SEL assures that all students have a place where they belong, a community that they feel safe in, and adults who they know care about their individual needs and lives. Sometimes good parenting is not enough. Our world is big, complicated, and challenging. The job of a parent isn't getting easier. SEL is a partnership opportunity between parenting and the school. SEL doesn't replace good parenting. SEL gives good parents a chance to have their message reinforced by the school and for kids who aren't getting that strong message at home to hear the message for the first time. There is research out there that I know has been provided to you that SEL raises achievement. If raising achievement is all you care about in the world, I hope that you take that research seriously and base your decision on that research. If you want to care about the whole child, as opposed to a child defined only by academic success, I would encourage you to consider the role of social emotional learning in your child's school day as an additional support to what is going on at home, or for those who aren't getting it at home, a safety net of mental wellness. SEL for others helps ensure a safe place for your children to learn. Thank you for your consideration of this letter and the role that SEL in public school settings serves in ensuring all students have a chance to learn, grow, and belong. Signed, Mary Owens.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for being brave and sharing such an intimate vulnerability with all of us. It's very powerful. Next, we have Justin Kenton.
I'm over here. So I'm a parent of 3, soon to be 4 kids in the Merton School District. And I'm really glad to see all the teachers here and educators here. Because I think it's important for me to hear your perspective and I guess I can show my perspective as a parent as well. The way I see some of these things, I don't know enough, right, to know what my kids are being taught about their feelings yet. Because my experience is the way it's being executed now is a wide variety. From my son, at one point, they were doing it daily, right? To this year, it's not the case, right? Some of the assignments that we receive home for my 5th grade daughter, I don't agree with the way things are being taught, the feelings she's being taught to express in that way, or maybe to accept, okay? So my point, I just want to have a conversation as a community. And I think it's important that as a parent, right, at the end of the day, no one's going to care about my kids more than I do, right? And I love the fact that there are teachers that care about my children too. I don't see the partnership between parents and teachers quite yet through this program personally. That's my personal experience. I received an email from one of my child's teachers, went to all the parents, SEL assignment sent home. When assignment sent home to my household, my kids complete it, whether I agree with it or not, okay? But that assignment basically said, hey, parents, nobody did this, right? So that makes me question how engaged are the parents in the program, or how do they even know what this program is? Because as much as there's research on the positive side supporting SEL, there's research on the other side as well, with some of the concerns that a parent might have about teaching a kid how to feel, right? Or how their feelings matter or don't matter in a certain situation. I've experienced with my own kids, the way that they cope with things has changed, right? And not always in a positive manner, in my opinion. And it is very true that the world is a very, very difficult and challenging place, right? I agree with that 100%. I believe the school should do whatever they can to take a child that maybe needs extra support and provide that support. But I think it's the parents need to know what's going on at all times, right? Specifically, we all can agree that someone's ideological opinions have no place in the classroom, right? And we've experienced in this district where ideological opinions have been shared with my children, right, that I don't agree with. And that's my concern with the program such as SEL, is there's a lot of opportunity for that to happen. So I would ask the board is we need to continue the conversation. We need to have the conversation as a community so that parents fully understand and it's full transparency of what this program is and what it means. And when I get a worksheet home that says copyright 2011 on it, right? I question, well, that's 10 years old. Is this even relevant? 11 years old, is it even relevant anymore to what we're discussing? Second step, I've done a lot of research on second step, whether that's the right program or not. I don't know the answer to that question because there's hundreds, literally hundreds of people that will sell you an SEL program. Which again, I question that. Why are there so many different people offering the same exact thing essentially? So that's my concern as a parent, right? I think as a parent, whether or not I offer it at home or not, it should be my choice to understand what your children, or informed consent, right? I want to be informed fully of what my children are going to be taught. Just like I want to know your math curriculum, I want to know all your curriculum. What is my child being taught, right? So I can consent to that being okay with me. Now, there are certain things that, of course, right? You know, math, right? There's certain things about math, but the way you teach math, there's different opportunities there of how you approach a situation. I'm not gonna date myself, but you know, my kids come home and say, Dad, here's how to solve a math problem. And I'll go, well, why don't you just do it this way? They'll go, well, that's not the way we do it, right? So as a parent, the more a parent is educated and understands, the more we can either support the program, or we can work together to offer a better solution to that situation. You know, hearing that story from that Phil shared, the world is I'm not gonna wash my language, the world is a really junky place at times, right? And we all know as adults, that doesn't change, right? It can get a lot worse. I had a similar experience in middle school where I was on a list as well, right? That this kid had made. And it was a difficult time for me, right? Very difficult time for me emotionally, right? But I can tell you, it was my parents and friends and family that helped me get through that more than it was anything else, right? In that case, honestly, I felt the school failed me in that situation, okay? But as a parent, I just think to be able to say it's great without knowing what it is. I'm very engaged in my kids' education and their lives. I don't fully understand what's being taught in the classroom, right? I don't think even on the teacher side can say everyone's doing it the same way, right? I read through every single comment when a teachers had the opportunity to provide feedback of the program. I read through every single one from the survey that the district did. The variety of opinions of what is acceptable and what's not was pretty wide in some of those comments, right? Including words such as social justice being used in some of those comments, which as a parent, that concerns me, right? Because my viewpoint is that has no place in the classroom. That's my personal opinion. So I think that the better conversation we have about it as a community, the better off we'll all be, right? Regardless of what the outcome is, everyone will be better prepared and better informed to do what's best for their kids.
Thank you.
This is a very minor mistake. So, you know, why am I here? Middle school sucked, all right? I hated middle school. I hated it with a passion, growing up and going through it because it was difficult. And, you know, I didn't know I was going to be a teacher. I went to college, you know, Claire, and the third year I'm like, I'll be a teacher because everything else I wanted to do, I just wasn't going to be. And all my friends were kind of doing it, so it's a terrible reason for me to become a teacher. But it's a gift. It's a gift that when I fell into it, like it felt natural. And you know, I always thought I was going to be an elementary school teacher. Like I got my elementary ed license because I'm like, you know, 4th, 5th grade is going to be perfect. I'm going to love it. But I went to Mondovi Middle School. I had my student teaching experience in Mondovi, and I had an 8th grade class. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks. These kids can relate with me. These kids can talk about dark things that they're going through in their life, and we can have like a real conversation. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe it's middle school. So then I get hired over the phone to teach in California, and I'm teaching math and science in California for 5 years, 7 years, whatever. I have amazing connections with these kids. And so, you know, over the course of my 20 years, I have come to find that this uncomfortableness that I felt in my middle school was the reason why I love being in middle school, to feel these weird, odd feelings with the kids and try to help them parse through what it is that they're feeling and to give them as many strategies to cope with it as possible. Now, when I was a kid, we had character traits that we were supposed to live up to at Kevin Rain. And you know, there's like thousands of names of things, just like the thousands of curriculums of SEL that we go through. But why are we here? We, in this room, are here for one thing: to foster academic excellence while inspiring curiosity and personal growth. That's what we have come together for the last 5 years on, at least since 2017 when we wrote the strategic plan. And you know, I've done a lot of thinking about how is it that I inspire curiosity or provide personal growth. And I reflect back to my time in my master's program. And I think about all the fear and rhetoric that goes out there into the public sphere. I think about the nation at risk. And if you don't know what nation at risk is, it's an old 1980s thing that sent this shockwave through the school district that we're doing terrible in the United States of America. And then all of a sudden, you know, I'm a science guy, so like I'm gonna focus on science a little bit. Halley's Comet came in '86, and Project 2061 came out, which was like a whole new benchmark of science standards that were trying to help students learn math, science, and technology in a way that was gonna be progressive. And so through the 80s and 90s, we had this like, kind of this glory moment of like, no, we're not this nation at risk. But then so all of a sudden 2001 came around and No Child Left Behind came. And so suddenly we're getting graded on AYP and API and all these different acronyms. And my school in California was an AYP school. Like we were bottom of the barrel in the district for a lot of different reasons. When I looked at my students, I wasn't like, you know, academically we had some improvement to do. But I would put those kids' emotional learning that we did together in a way that made me know that that was important. So then my partner and I came to this moment of developing peer mediators. And peer mediators isn't something we do here in Merton, but it's a way for students to help with conflict and for students to resolve conflict before it gets to, let's say, Mrs. Stein or Mr. Posick. And it really was an amazing thing for me to see these students actually helping other students peer mediate. So I had these inklings like maybe there's something bigger that a school district could do. To kind of finish this like short brief history of the fear and the rhetoric, because then the Common Core came, and obviously there's a lot of fear and rhetoric around Common Core. But to be honest, it's just a bunch of standards, it's a bunch of benchmarks, like, hey, we gotta hit these. Like none of us are like thinking that there's this implicit like drive to, you know, do this agenda. Like that's not what any of those standards were. And I spent many 2 minutes unpacking at least the science Common Core standards. Like, so, I mean, there's nothing between the lines. It's just, let's try to learn some things. Let's try to have some content. I want to talk about a little bit about physical layout, because back when I was at Cumberland, they had this open concept. All of a sudden, we went to a house system, we had a closed concept in which we were in our own classrooms. And now I'm seeing like at Oconomowoc and here, as I went through my trajectory, we're starting to do open concept again. I keep seeing all these cycles, not only in the way that fear and rhetoric go, but in all these cycles of how the physical layout of school buildings go. So then I think about pedagogy and how I teach this wonderful thing. And I think about all the times when I was like a bluebird in the reading group, and I was like, what the heck's a bluebird? But the blackbird was reading a better book than I was. Wait a second, I think I'm being tracked. And then all of a sudden we decided, well, homogeneous groups are the way to go. If we keep them all together, they're doing the same thing, they're going to learn better because they're all at the same level. Oh, but wait, heterogeneous groups seem to work better because then I've got examples of people below and people above, and I can strive to do better. And then finally we get to this idea of inclusion, of maybe those students that were in pull-up classes really do deserve to be with those other students because they're going to see other possibilities of what I can achieve. And maybe right now I'm not able to achieve those things, but eventually I will be able to achieve those things. And then I hit the gold mine with Mr. Middleton in full inclusion. I will come back to that in just a minute. I'm gonna try not to be super long-winded, but I gotta talk about 3 people. One of them is John Dewey. John Dewey has been around, well, he's not been around, he's dead now, but.
This is a sign thing.
Well, he was one of the original constructivist approaches to education. His whole philosophy, which, I mean, UW-Madison really definitely bent me towards Dewey. My 2 professors were just head over heels for Dewey. But let me tell you a little about Dewey. His ideal classroom was to have a small group of kids and to not like teach them within sitting at a desk, but was to go out into the world and actually teach. Now, in our district, that's not possible. We do our best to do those things, but to me, that's my ideal. Like that's what I want to hit. So then I think about Summerhill, which is the school in England, which is a complete free school. Kids go, kids don't have to do anything. All they have to do is show up. What they found at Summerhill is that, the first 2 months or 3 months, kids would screw around and goof off. All of a sudden, they started to want to join in and started learning on their own accord. But they were not treated as though they were wrong and not wanting to participate. They were treated like adults and were told, like, you can do these things. But then I think about the opposite of that, the critic of Summerhill, which was Bantai. And he was like, no, we must be drill and kill, and we must learn. Students must know this now and now and now. And so
There's that memorization part, that part that a lot of us in this room probably reflect back when we think about school. Because our teachers didn't have the tools to do what we can do, because we have better information and better, we've gone through more, it's just experience. So I then come to my one course about the brain. And I've had two amazing teachers about the brain. One of them's a mom of somebody in here, but the other one I'm going to talk about is all about cognition and how we actually learn. We learn from taking our prior experiences and building it. It is not only academic learning that we do this in, we do this in our social learning and our emotional learning. Where we come from, we build in pieces. We actually build this stuff called schemata. Schemata is those connected things within our brain and our neural pathways that allow us to connect to our past and into our future. And that is where we are really trying to go with this. Now, what I want you to see through these three different things of the fear and the rhetoric, the physical layout, and kind of the styles of learning or classroom approach is that these things keep going in cycles. And we need to be smarter about the way that we approach things in this district to cut through that, to not let the fear and the rhetoric get under our skin, and to really see what it is that we want to do. I think I said it, we want to foster academic excellence while inspiring curiosity and personal growth. That is what we want to do. So there are many problems that I see with going with SEL. This is my fake teacher hat in which I've talked to my colleagues, and I want them to kind of share, what are the problems I see? Well, I don't have enough time. I've got to meet these standards. I've got to do this content because, we're getting these state tests and I got to do this content. And I just can't do it. So I want to make sure that we're okay for the performance tests. Oh, I just don't feel comfortable about sharing my feelings. Those are the things that some teachers are saying about SEL. And those are valid feelings. However, as a district, we need to bring them in because their social and emotional learning isn't to the point where we can have that real conversation. Students are probably like, I can't share in front of these people. Why would I want to share my feelings? I feel uncomfortable to share. Oh, empathy and feeling, that's not supposed to be here. I should share that with, I don't share that with mom and dad, So we have all these like conflicting problems that we could pontificate about, but they're not really problems. They're opportunities for solutions because I've seen the flip. So I started doing Circle of Power Respect back in 2012. I did it in Oconomowoc and I brought it over here and I did it here as well. Circle of Power and Respect is what you get into a circle, and I have made many adults uncomfortable with this. But we get in the circle. If you're an adult in my room, you're going to get in the circle with us and you're going to share the same. And the reason we share is because we need to start to build common language and common ground. I did this mostly with 8th graders, and the reason I'd said to them is that you're about to go to Arrowhead, and I want you to at least see that kid in the hallway and be like, you know what, they're not my friend, but I've made a connection with them and I can be okay. So if I'm having a bad day or having a bad time in this class, I at least have somebody that is connected to me. Now, in my circle, we could pass if we didn't want to share those feelings. Sometimes we didn't. There's one activity though that I want to talk about, which is the compliment greet. The compliment greet is something that I have done in my classroom many, many times, in which two students go into the middle and they have to say a compliment. They may not actually share a superficial compliment. You may not compliment somebody on their clothing, their looks, or anything like that. You have to dig deep back into the past or into the present. We live with these people, like has been explained so many times before. And in these compliment greets, kids got real nervous at first. But at the end, man, we were sharing crazy stories from like 2nd grade. We're sharing stories from 5th grade. We're sharing stories from 7th grade. Like we found these common grounds. We shared things on the football field, the basketball field, the volleyball field, in which we were cultivating. And I gotta tell you, by that 3rd time we did it, it wasn't even like it was a chore. They were like, can we do the compliment greet again? Can we do the compliment greet? But I also found in my academic learning that they were actually more willing to share that learning at that same moment. I want to talk about one last thing about Mr. Middleton in the full inclusion, because differentiation was another thing in which we're supposed to teach to the individual and all that other stuff. We had a math class in which we had some students doing 2nd and 3rd grade work, and then we had 8th graders doing algebra. This was all in one class. Now, my students that are doing second and third grade work, they never felt like they could do the math work with us. But I will tell you, the Circle of Power and Respect and the SEL that we did in their room, they felt connected to, and they commented on, and their parents commented on how great those connections were. Now, my conclusion is this. I know I ramble a lot, and I know I've got a lot of different points that I'm going to, but I care deeply about the students. All of my colleagues that have spoken, these are things that I've been able to share. I think about Mary's story, and I gotta be honest, you know, when my friend did that same thing, this type of stuff gave me an opportunity to speak about it. I cannot tell you how many parents have commented to me about that specific story that I was able to share, much like Mrs. Iwanski's that was shared. This relationship thing never, ever, ever gets easier. And the more relationships and the more talking about this stuff, the better it is. So it was a lot of work for us to come up with the SEL curriculum. There is no perfect curriculum. I think AJ said it perfect. Like, things can always be re-looked at, but SEL as an idea, as a concept, is something that is going to reach us to getting academic excellence and curiosity and personal growth. I would read the vision statements again, but they'll just reiterate my points as to why this is important. So I'll say these. It's about being courageous, having integrity, being inquisitive, being exceptional, being persistent, being kind. None of those things can be recorded by a number on a state test. None of them. All of those are qualitative things that only grow over time. So I would be sad to get that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm scarred, more rudimentary than that. My name is Lindsay. I'm a PE teacher here at Merton, and I've been teaching for 32 years and have been part of many different initiatives within the school. I was part of the SEL committee when it originated here at Merton. It was new, it caused some anxiety, and many of us were unsure how it was going to unfold. We all understood the importance of it and felt we all taught bits and pieces of this already, but knew we needed a consistent way to get these critical concepts in front of our students in meaningful ways in this ever-changing world. As a PE teacher, I get to see almost all of our students in this building and watch them grow. Since implementing this program, I've seen the benefits firsthand in our kids' ability to build and develop relationships, manage themselves, become more self-aware, make better decisions, especially in tough situations, and more accepting of others. I can't think of a more important competency, teaching social and emotional skills for the long term as kids master the ability to navigate their emotions, reactions, and relationships in hopes of developing confident kids with much less anxiety. All of this will have a direct impact on kids being able to achieve more academically. Isn't this what we all want? We have many great kids and families who naturally teach their kids so many important skills related to these social and emotional competencies. But teaching them in a real life environment, in real life situations, around peers on a daily basis is much more powerful. SEL is not a behavior program or only meant for kids who have behavior concerns. It is all inclusive. Many of my best behaved kids can benefit from many of these SEL components. Again, SEL is not a behavior program. In my over 3 decades of teaching experience, this is easily the most effective, productive, and academically supportive initiative that I've ever been part of, and our kids deserve this.
I have somebody whose sign in is possibly.
Yeah, so possibly, yes. My name is Rebecca Ines, it's my husband Dan, and we have 2 kids here at Merton. We moved here in the fall of 2020, and our transition for our kids has been a bit of a struggle. And one struggles more obviously than the others. And Jed, thank you for normalizing crying, because it's that happens. It's always good for us. But one of the things that is very important to us is that over here, there are at least 6 of you who impact both of our kids' lives so much. In addition to that, it's not just because you're nice people, and it's not just because you have big hearts. One of the things that they are telling us is that they can use the words that they're getting from the SEL program. And this is
really vital for us. I'm a communication professor, so we talk a lot about talking in my house. Both my spouse and my. So we do this at home, but it's not just at home. That this idea, exactly what you were saying, Lindsay, practicing it in the environment where there are different stresses and there are different, the context matters. The ability to practice those both at home and at school is going to be foundational to our kids. I'm a college professor, and one thing we're noting, the American College Association of College and Universities is noting this too, is that our adults, our college adults are crashing mentally. At the university, we've taken straight to Rogers 500% more kids, they're adults, but kids in the last year. Rogers, no one, Florida. Psychiatric health. When they're flooded in the classroom, these are adults in the classroom. They can't learn now, or they can't hear me. I'm having, it's not, nobody ever taught me what to do with a panic attack, but I now work with that in a college classroom. That's not just my school. When we wait for, we talk about the need for mental health resources, but when we wait for the crisis for children, right, across our society, our ability to talk about our emotions, to talk about our relationships is what keeps us grounded, and making that just a normal part of our everyday life is something that not just important to my kids, I think it's foundational to what's helping them to get through their struggles here. And so while Mr. Kent's right, there are many, many programs. But one of the things that I am confident in is that every person here making those decisions is a professional who has been educated, very well educated in making those decisions, and that you are continuously educated and educating yourselves across your professional lifespan. And so that comforts me in the choices that you make, and also says, again, it's not just about being nice. You're professional, educated people who are really making good choices for our kids that I am very comfortable with. And at any time I've had questions, the teachers, the administrators have always been open and able to talk with me. And so I am, even as we struggle, right, I am comforted that we are
Well, that is everybody who checked that they wanted to speak.
Just one more quick comment, because I think it's important from my perspective again, is we talk about academic achievement, right? That's one thing I challenge the district is I as a parent want to see that. I want to see is the program we're implementing making a difference, right? Are we seeing improvement in academic achievement because of this program? And the other piece, I guess I get confused on is when you research SEL, one of the keywords they use all the time is improving a child's behavior. Over and over and over again, you read that, improving a child's behavior. And again, that's me needing to learn and understand more. If that's one of the core basis of the program is, I think there needs to be some involvement from the parents understanding what are the needs of your child with their behavior, right? You know, I as a parent, I struggle all the time with my kids' behavior, right? But I would hope at school, the teachers never have to struggle with my kids' behavior because we try to address it in a continuous basis at home. And so those are the two things I would ask the district is, you know, where's the data to prove that it's working from an academic achievement standpoint, A, and B, is behavior part of the program or not part of the program? Because my opinion is, right, I want to influence my child's behavior, right? And that's I believe the sole responsibility of a parent, because I should send my kid prepared to school to learn. That's it. Thank you.
Can I say why I think SEL has one of theirs are like behavior things or no?
I'd love to hear it.
I think that it's mostly on PBIS, which is positive behavior implementation strategies. But that's a way for those companies to market their thing to sell it. And so they're selling it to those school districts that struggle with behavior in a bigger sense. We are beyond blessed here at Merton. I've been at 5 schools. Like the behavior that you're maybe thinking or characterizing is not here. We're digging deeper with this. We're digging about how do we actually exist with all these different opinions and all these different feelings and still hold tight to what I've been taught at home, what I know is to be true, but also share that in a positive and a encouraging light. So when you do blanket research, that's probably why you're seeing it as this behavior check. Because again, those companies want to sell. And how are they going to sell to those districts that are struggling with behavior? Well, this is a behavior system for it. That is, in my opinion, being on the SEL committee and like going through it, like that was not really our concern. Our concern was how can we help with these competencies? How can we help with those Merton values and missions?
And I don't want to turn into a back and forth discussion, but you know, some of the things you say is what concerns me, right? I don't need teachers digging into my child's issues at home necessarily.
Okay,
right?
so I want to
Without-
be careful
without
here. I
informing-
want to be careful here that you're not having a personal conversation that may be better in a
There's no
different
personal
setting.
conversation, we're responding to the.
No, but when you're talking about yourself, your child, and your family, we're trying to keep this conversation
Sure.
global.
Okay, any
So
parents,
just consider maybe this should be for you and your family in a different setting.
I open the conversation, right, to anybody to have it. I think the whole community needs to have this conversation, right? But the point is, you know, digging deeper as a parent, right? That's what I'm concerned with, because I mean, the way you're discussing it,
I would
Your-
not
your
use my
execution of
words,
it?
though. I'd be careful about using my words because I'm overly empathetic and I'm overly, said,
You have nothing to apologize.
yeah, I don't want you, don't misconstrue the language. If you and I want to have a personal conversation, you and I can have.
yeah, and I totally understand. I guess my point is, right, as a parent, right, I want to be aware, right, of where we're dating. What are we discussing, right? Just like you would in any situation. What does that discussion look like in the classroom? And I guess that's my final thing.
And we can address that when we get to.
Those are some, yep.
Absolutely.
All right, okay, acceptance of donations. We do have one donation this evening. A big thank you to the Mark G. Sellers Entrepreneurial Foundation for their generous donation of $16,353. Mary Iwanski and I have been working with this foundation for the last year and a half. We got hooked up with them at Waukesha County and we've been engaging with them almost quarterly. And recently they called us up and said, it's your turn. And Mr. Wagner and Mrs. Iwanski put together a wish list and they funded it. So we were very fortunate. Again, we have multiple 3D printers, a new dust sanding collection system, power tools, battery operated nailers, additional drill presses. So all things that are going to be really nice finishing touches in our area. So big thank you to the Mark Sellers Foundation as well. So just looking for a donation to accept the Mark G. Sellers Entrepreneur Foundation as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the donation from the Mark G. Sellers Entrepreneurial Foundation as presented. Second.
Motion in a second, any discussion?
It's all the work coming up with what to do and writing grants and all of that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
No personnel actions tonight. For information for staff recognition, our first item, I think it's very important to recognize Katie Welnetz as this being, sorry, Katie, we're going to do this to you. Katie's been a board member for 6 years, and obviously, when she signed up, it wasn't this difficult the last couple of years, in particular dealing with the COVID situation and things like that. But Katie's contribution to our community and to our district have been numerous, all the way from a strategic plan to multiple curriculum adoptions, sitting through all of the student achievement committees, even all the time, and facilities and finances. It's been a wonderful 6 years, and we certainly appreciate and recognize the time that you have put into this away from your family, but ultimately the blood, sweat, and tears that have all gone into being a board member for the past 6 years. So Katie, thank you very, very much, and we wish you the best of luck.
I would also echo, as a new board member this past year, Katie, the amount of onboarding Katie has done for me and the wealth of knowledge she has in this district. It's sad to see her go. Recognize she's done a lot for me personally this past year, and I'm gonna miss her. So thank you for everything you've done to help me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you just giving me the honor to be able to work with you, share your energy and passion with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate, very, very much.
Okay.
Couple of, okay. We do have, and again, we'll be pushing this out and continue to advertise across our entire community. Our musical is coming up as well. We have Little Mermaid being presented April 7th, 8th, and 9th. Again, our entire community is welcome. And again, we'll be pushing that out to everybody. And again, it's going to be a wonderful show. We're really looking forward to it. And then summer school is going to be getting rolling here as well. And hopefully later this week, we will be pushing out our booklet. And again, we'll have 2 main sessions, but again, something that our families really look forward to. And we're excited about offering again too as well. So more information coming later this week. So that's all I got.
Okay. We are on to committee reports.
Sure. Earlier this evening, we met as a student achievement committee and talked about the 3 items, and it was a review of our intermediate school proposals for some of our encore exploratory and elective offerings as well. And again, it was second time that we've shown it to the community and the first time that our community got a chance to take a look at it. Again, you will see that it has a strong ACP focus, that again, it aligns, hopefully it goes sequential, that allows our kids to have that curiosity and that academic and career planning as they start to think about what they want to do and grow up and entering into the high school as well. Probably one of the biggest changes that we saw was a commitment to bringing world language down to the 6th grade level on an every other day. That was seen through our curricular adoption, but ultimately taking a look at how we wanted to and when we wanted to bring world language down to our kids too as well. But lots of great opportunities there. Big thank you to a lot of our staff who helped us put that together as well, as they helped Maria put everything in sequential order. And now it's a big task for us to pull it all off. So we're going to do it. We're excited about the new opportunities that have been blessed with us with the facility, with staff, passions, as well as the community offerings and the donations and everything to allow us to do the things we want to do for our kids. So. And also you'll see a first review of our social studies program. Again, big thank you to Maria and the team. Who was anybody in the room who was part of the social studies adoption? Brenda? Okay, so there we go. So there's a whole list of people there, but again, you'll see it's a 41-page document that Maria has put together outlining the recommendations for the board to consider. And again, that'll be reviewed again next month at the board meeting, a little bit later in the meeting as well. And then Maria gave us a detailed presentation on what the expectations of educator effectiveness is, or basically teacher and principal supervision and evaluation as well. So, and it will be noted we were done 5 minutes early. That's okay.
Rain on my parade.
Maria, could you speak really briefly to all the people on the committee, and not necessarily having to name them all, but given that we have such, what you shared with us as student achievement, having the subbing shortages and what that required of people giving their extra time was really above and beyond.
Yeah, you know, it's really hard to do committee work in districts right now because normally we've used our sub pool to take teachers out of their classrooms to learn and grow and look at resources, and that hasn't been available the last couple of years within the pandemic. So a lot of the teachers who are on the committee, like Brenda, had to give up some of their professional learning time, and that often meant she wasn't working with her 4th grade peers and teams during their team time or at other times, or they had to do work outside of what they didn't finish. So I'm just really grateful for all the teachers who stepped up on a variety of committees this year and taken time outside of their day or in creative times to work and do the continued improvement cycle that we're working for. So a big thank you to everybody.
You're on to new business.
Sure, ESSER plan. So again, it's been talked about quite a bit, and was formally asked to be on the agenda for this month. The idea of just wanted to kind of showcase, and a big thank you to Maria and April for putting this all together and hopefully making it make sense about where those federal dollars are going to be going and what we are predicting to be able to use those too as well. So you'll see 3 documents, one highlighting ESSER 1, one highlighting ESSER 2, and the other one highlighting ESSER 3. And hopefully it captures a little bit of what we've done with it, what we plan on doing it, what we're using it this year, and then ultimately in the future as well. So just want to throw it out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great transparency document. I appreciate you putting it together. The only couple of questions I have, and one maybe is for April, one's maybe for you. On ESSER 3, you got it highlighted in yellow. Feds haven't approved it yet. Probably 2 questions there. Do we have any idea when we're going to do it, and then, or when they might approve it? And then how do we balance the waiting on that to some of the initiatives that are highlighted in this, projected spend? Meaning, if the feds take a long time here, but we're kind of targeting use of some of those funds for interventionalists and whatnot, how long can we wait before we lose out on potential, hires there before the school starts? It's a long-winded.
Yep. If we're going to give an update on where the legislation is, or hopefully the process.
Yeah, so we've been hearing a bunch of different things on where this is in the approval process. The thing with this discretionary allocation is it's made up of about 6 different pieces. There's like 6% is, $67 million, and then 8% is over here and 3%. And so there's certain, like all of those percentages stand for something. So like one of those tiny buckets being like $67 million is solely based on the hours of in-person instruction. So like that is its own bucket. And then there's another one that's like just for after school programs. And there's another one that's just for summer school. And there's another one that's like specific towards like getting kids up to, I'm not gonna do it justice. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Learning loss.
Thank you, there we go, for the win. So I think part of the problem about why this is taking forever is because they're approving all of those different sections as one thing. So there's like a bunch of little different discussions that need to be happening between all of those items, but we have, I hate to say, like, we've heard this because I thought it was gonna be approved already. Like, we were originally hearing it was gonna be approved by spring. We're in spring. Now we're hearing that it should be approved before fall. So that's an interesting timeline when it comes to hiring, because that doesn't really give us an answer. And this is our anticipated discretionary. I guess I don't know how firm, like if one of those buckets changes inside of the 10%, that might give us more, it might give us less. It depends on how this is finally approved.
We feel strongly that these 2 positions, or the positions that we were proposing for the next 2 years are strong enough that if in fact we need to find some dollars in the budget, we certainly can. The good news is for the one thing we do know, the title allocation for Title III is $270,000. So this upcoming year, we're very confident that we'll be able to cover it. It's that following year, which hopefully by the fall we'll know where it is, and then we'll have a new budget and we'll be able to move forward with it from there too. So,
and we'll be in a new biennial by 23-24 as well. So hopefully we might have some, more state money. Yeah.
So is this for you and the team, is this you're starting the process, putting together?
we have started the process. We have job descriptions that are all ready to go. And if this is something that the board wants us to go, we are ready to post. And we would like to post immediately and begin to look at our current staff members and see if there's anyone who would fit the bill. We have some people who would probably be interested and but would ultimately like to begin moving forward with these positions. Certainly would.
So is that on the agenda for April then?
As soon as we would hire individuals, we bring them as we hire them. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. But we are ready to go, and the intent was is if the board is good for it, we have postings ready to go.
I support it. I know we're not voting on anything, but
no, it's
was the goal. Thank you.
And we can bring this back in a couple months and just to kind of keep the line items going, and ultimately we'll have April continue to keep us in the loop of when those funds get approved.
I would think like once a quarter. Once a quarter, I think is reasonable. And at the end of the day, based upon what, if you look at ESER two, the big spend that we approved last month.
Yep.
That's gonna basically utilize all of ESER two, essentially, minus a little bit, and then ESER three are these positions, so. It just.
April, we can bring these in just when we do our quarterly updates with finance committee and things like that.
Absolutely.
It's real easy.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody for your feedback on that too as well. Okay, the maintenance shed. Unfortunately, we did have one of our contractors pulled out this morning. And so at this point, my recommendation to the board is to pause the project. I don't have, again, I attempted to get 3 bids. I've got 1.5 bids because the 1 bid that I do have from one of the contractors, the company can't do it until January. So I really like the shed to be recited sometime in the future, but the great news is functionally, it's functioning like we're not leaking in the roof or anything else like that. So just given where we're at right now, we have our facility plan coming up too. I was really hopeful to get a number closer to that 40-ish number, but and things just can kind of continue to rise, but maybe now isn't the right time because I don't have 3 bids to get to the board that are competitive either. So I'd like to, my recommendation is to table it until I can really gather 3 bids, and that may be a little bit later in the fall, because this is something that can happen, you know, kind of year round too as well.
From the facility planning or facility committee perspective, how did we arrive at the decision to redo siding on the shed? Versus there's been talk of replacing it altogether. There's been talk of upgrading capabilities so that we can, you know, do classwork in that space, to have different tools, you know, breakout makerspace kind of stuff. How did we reach the decision to just reside what we had and kind of leave it versus any of the other ideas?
My recommendation came from the building structurally was really, really solid, first of all. And functionally, we were able to from a maintenance standpoint, I felt that the recommendation to build a new one, tear it down and make it bigger wasn't worth the cost. Even from the student side, it really, when we built our beautiful manufacturing center, and we do have a couple ideas about how we continue to expand that opportunities, all the way from putting a garage door in possibly that allows outdoor access for the kids to do some finishing and to do whatever it is that they might be able to sprawl out a little bit more outside. Given the new facility that we have too, so we kind of took the student side out of it from that standpoint, and then really took a look at what we were using it for, and really felt that the current layout for what we needed was holding to the district to be able to do what the district wanted to do at this time.
Okay. One of the follow-up question, unrelated, kind of. One of the
related.
Greatly related. So one of the things that was a compromise when we redid the remodeling of this building was there was a effectively reduced storage space, right, from a maintenance perspective in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any consideration into, you know, addressing that as part of the, you know, a maintenance shed type of update or refurbish or whatever, or are we doing okay, or do we just have everything over at Mary's? Or
right now, we're doing okay. Again, we've been working, in particular, Dave and in his department, really working internally with some of the his ideas, and Dave presented a few ideas to me a couple weeks ago. I think it was that we really feel that we're going to be able to accomplish over the summer that will help with the storage side of the manufacturing side, the manufacturing center. Okay. The district storage facility, though, is something that we'll continue to keep an eye on, and actually through the 10-year facility plan, we can probably address some of that. And that could be at the end of the things, and that could be probably going into the pause too as well, to say, if we want to step back again and say, hey, do we need to go bigger? And if so, let's have a collective whole about it, because back in 2008, if was scheduled, the last one of the referendums, 2008, 2009, it was set to be tore down and expanded to as well. So we've got those plans already to go.
Okay. I guess it would probably make, in my opinion, not that we're voting on anything, it would make sense to pause it and revisit it as part of the facility
plan
rehash.
Certainly. Yes. For our lunch tables, we do. These are 20 years old, and unfortunately, I could only secure 2 bids for the project because it was so unique. Again, those in-pocket tables that walk by, they are 20 years old. A big thank you to our maintenance crew and our custodians for keeping them functional. But, the new mechanisms, the safety enhances are greatly needed for the project too. So you'll see 2 different bids from 2 different vendors. We do feel that the current product that we have has been a good product for 20 years. So that is why my recommendation is for the board to make a motion to approve the purchase of the new intermediate school cafeteria lunch tables from Fund 50 by Marshfield Book and Stationery as presented. Fund 50 is from our food service account. So that would be where these dollars would come from.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of new intermediate school cafeteria lunch tables from Fund 50 by Marshfield Book and Stationery as presented.
Second.
Motion in a second, any discussion?
After this project, fund balance in there still healthy?
Yep, right now we have about 110,000 as of the end of February. So if we take out, how much were these, 60? Yeah. We're still healthy.
And if I remember correctly, that's growing every month because of the free lunch from the vets.
Yep, and the higher reimbursement rate. All districts are being reimbursed this year at the rural rate, which is $4.09, versus the regular lunch reimbursement rate is $3.56. So we're, yeah.
So it'll
it's
come back a little bit.
Correct.
Between
It'll
now and
salvage.
then. Okay.
Yeah. But good question.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We are on to discussion of current social emotional learning curriculum program. So thank you very much for everybody that spoke and how passionate you were. Open and honest and brave. As someone who was part of the SEL committee and the strategic plan work, I feel the same way I did then when this started, that this is important, necessary, and intentional. And I know, AJ, you said about if there is something better, and that's the one thing that I admire from all the staff in our district, whether it's SEL, math, science, anything, there's that constant theme pulls through everywhere. If there's something better, something else, something more we can do, we're going to find it and do it. And so I think the direction SEL is going and the curricular cycle that it's on that cycle needs to be maintained. That was put in action in effect for a reason. We need to honor those decisions, and we also need to honor the development plan that we're on right now, that we've all committed to. So, I mean, pretty clear I feel strongly about it.
What is, so I wasn't here when it was established. What is the typical, because I think our normal core curriculum is 5 years, is that the same?
Yep, it would be on a 5-year cycle. So, yep, so it really came from the strategic plan called for, because it was talked about during the process of creating that. And that really, and you kind of heard a little bit, and kind of when Wendy spoke, she talked about everybody was kind of doing a little something, and we just wanted to make sure that somebody wasn't saying, well, I think Mrs. Welnetz is doing it and Mr. Spindler must be doing it, so that means I'm off the hook. So we really wanted something that was universal, that was consistent, so that as we built through, just like a math curriculum or anything else, we continue to build into our kids' social and emotional learning and things like that too. So we did the same kind of adoption like you saw with the social studies curriculum. The team learned, and at the time it was the state came up with new competencies with the CASTLE programs and things like that too as well. So.
And the only other thing I would say is, I know we kind of, I think we tabled it last month, Maria, as part of the dashboard, and figuring out kind of measurements.
But where?
On that component, just that one component.
Yeah, we are waiting for this discussion.
Yeah, wait, right, okay.
We tabled curiosity.
So I would like to just, at some point on the next meeting, student achievement meeting, just hear some thoughts on how we would measure that effectiveness as part of that district dashboard. Any type of ideas? I think would be.
Well,
Sorry,
were you? I was just, I think that conversation was about inspiring curiosity, which is not necessarily the same as this.
There was a line
There
item,
was a line
Phil.
item. Yeah.
There was
a box,
one with
two
a
boxes.
TBD.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, and one of the reasons why we didn't bring back the district dashboard for further discussion or for some finalization was just kind of waiting around the SEL. There was a commitment to say, let's put off the curiosity, but the SEL component, and we can bring back some ideas about how we can possibly measure that too. As well.
And I know I mentioned we get back to the availability of the curriculum in some of the questions you brought up, Justin. And so Ron, could you speak to the access to the curriculum and its specifics?
Sure. Well, first of all, if we need to, we communicate, and what I found, and I'll just in Troy's here, and I've been working with Troy a lot these past weeks and things like that from a 6-8 standpoint too as well. And I think one of the discussions I wanted to bring up, if we wanted to just kind of response is what are some things that we can make that curriculum a little bit more transparent if in fact we would like to. Because online what we have is we have the main learning objectives about what they are. From a 6-8 standpoint, we have teacher resources that could be online. I need to kind of talk about second step about what can be published, because obviously there might be some copyright things that we need to consider, but ultimately what's available and what we can take a peek at, and that could be something that our team can go back and take a look at and say, okay, we have what we have on the website, can we expand it more? Or what more do parents want to know about? Because from a 6-8 lens, they've been putting it on the digital dashboard or their digital homework weekly. So it's really, clear and transparent there. But from a primary standpoint, do we want to do something a little bit more from a parent link or something like that too as well? So we can take a peek at how we can make sure that it's a little bit more transparent. If we want it, if we can make it more transparent, how can we make that all families know what's being taught? Very similar to some of our curriculums of other curriculums.
The primary level, just continuing including that in the daily blurb that teachers send out, right? So at least in the emails that I get from my student's teacher, like that's part of that email is the SEL.
And I guess that probably goes
It
back
doesn't go
to-
into like you don't have the full the full curriculum or full worksheet or whatever, but it gives a highlight of what's being done.
Right, and that's where I think some of the maybe the concerns, maybe some teachers do, some teachers don't. We did find that one of the in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there's a bullying unit in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and there's a parent letter that we'll be sending out next year because there was a parent link that was part of the program that we missed that we will be sending out in the future. Now, I wouldn't say it was the most informative thing, but it was just about your child will be learning about these topics, and please continue to talk to your child about it. And here is another person that you can talk about in the district, and it identifies district personnel about who they could talk to if there's a bullying situation or if they have any other concerns too as well. So I think from a transparency standpoint, we can see what we can do. But I think, Phil, too, it's what I heard, especially Mr. Kent kind of said the consistency. Does the consistency across the district meet the expectations about what we want to make sure that's being flown out from a communication standpoint?
Yeah, I would see what you could get from second step as far as additional, I understand about the copyright. So I would do that, and however much we can put on line for transparency, I think there's always a positive for parents.
When the program started, I'm learning, just throw it out there for you guys. In fact, I tried to table this so I could actually get into the text rooms and learn some more, but when it started, what kind of information were the parents part of this committee? Were parents, how did they find out about SEL being taught? And what's part of SEL? When you rolled it all out as a new program, what was the communication that you had then?
I'll probably turn it over to.
In terms of
some of
people
our
on the committee, there weren't any parents outside of staff members and board members who are parents in the district.
Were they invited to join this committee or?
The only time we invite outside people to be part of the curriculum selections for human growth development. That's not common practice or
outside of posting it, but.
The same way
Yeah,
when
there's
we.
no, public notice is
No part of
notified.
board packets and things like that too, but.
Well, the same way we adopt a math curriculum and don't invite everybody.
We don't explicitly invite them.
Well,
They're all
they do
open
for human
meetings.
growth, there's a similar.
Human growth and development, we are required by law.
Yeah.
We are required by law.
And
I mean, they're
I
very
want to
different
make this clear
things.
too, just asking questions. It's not required by the state to have SEL, right?
Correct.
So where you say math is the same, it's not, because math is something we are required to get to. And I also want to say SEL, I'm not saying, I don't know, I watched the movie over, or the video, not the movie, the video again of student achievement. I didn't mean to completely, I'm just gonna cut this program without even learning. I want to learn about the program. And I'm not saying that even to cut it, first of all, I'm only 1 of 5 board members. But then second of all, I just, as a parent, I think we should have the right to know what our kids are being taught. And I don't feel that we have that now. As a community, I feel that maybe we can be better about it. As not just a personal one, but as a school community, knowing exactly what our kids are being taught.
Jackie or Becca or Jay, can you speak to what the rollout was for, it was an interesting time with the COVID framework. But I think we just kind of, again, left it to our classroom teachers to kind of follow the parent links and things like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about every other lesson for K-5 has a home link that goes home. I know we have paper copies in K-4 right now that were printed at the end of last year, ready to send home every lesson.
When you say K-4, kindergarten through 4th grade?
Yes. Yeah, those are the hard copies ready to go home. I believe kindergarten through 5th grade also has a start of the year parent letter that goes home. That kind of just has like, here we're starting it up. This is the unit layout. And so that's the start of the communication. Thinking back to 2 years ago, if we did something, I would have to go look them. I feel like maybe we did something to inform parents at like open house because it was new at that time, but I would have to go back and look. I know that's at least a discussion on the table of rolling it out, but otherwise there's a start of the year thing.
And this is 6 to 8, the agenda that goes home every day for the
Right.
teachers, the SEL topic is right at the top for 6th grade, for 7th grade, for 8th grade, whatever they're talking about that week is right there.
On the
But
digital
the
notes,
On the digital,
yeah,
on the digital
digital
notebook that goes home to families, yeah.
The one thing for families, when you have just a topic, sometimes it doesn't really explain to us exactly what is how it's being addressed or what is being addressed. And then my other question would be, how do, I keep looking at you, Jackie. Oh, that's fine, I'll try and answer. But my next question is, how do you know, like we have a curriculum, but sometimes just human nature, you go off of the curriculum, or you might segue into some different of your way you perceive it. So how do you help the teacher stay right on the curriculum so that there isn't a segue into another? I guess it's very, yes.
Having been in several different grade level
Yeah.
classrooms during SEL, it is scripted. Like, there is no way to
There's
get
a
around
big
it.
piece of paper that they're reading off of it, so I guess that's part of kind of why we felt it important to have a curriculum to go off of, right, so that it wasn't, so that there weren't really those opportunities, so that the message was consistent and, yeah, I mean, it's very scripted at every grade level, it's literally bolded, this is what you say, this is how the kids might respond, this is, and so.
However, with that.
I don't-
being said,
yeah.
I want to go back though, because when we adopted this into, during this time, it was really important that there was still the autonomy of the lesson teacher. Because we talked about how some of these stories or examples are very cheesy sometimes, you know what I mean, to buy in. So I remember this conversation coming up, but the overall basis of what's being taught is very scripted. I definitely think, and as people, some people use those stories and that works just great. There's some role playing and some things like that happens. But I think that was one of the things that we discussed, like anything, and when it comes up, because it's not like it's only happening during this moment of time in the morning, if it's a morning meeting or anything else. This is happening all day long, so teachers are using their judgment and their professionalism to make decisions in the moment, to be able to teach and to reinforce or that type of situation. So we can't just go to it's only scripted, because this is happening all day long. Right? Does that make sense? As for the onboarding question, or how do we get information that, I know that on my start, I gave out information about what is our responsive classroom, that morning meeting, what does that look like? That also came in like newsletters and flyers and stuff like that. But the true, what are we sending curriculum, I guess that would be a question to any, or in a new social studies adoption here too. I think there was information presented, as well as like then what the communication like Lindsay's asking for to be stronger and better. That would be universal to any of the curriculum that we use. And what that would look like. I know, Maria, you're working on a curriculum, the dashboard and everything else that's being housed in a way that our family do have access to. So
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna develop over time,
it's just
right?
gonna be developed
So,
over time.
and I mean, for new teacher onboarding, they get training from Second Step as part of our onboarding for the new teachers. When they come, and they actually get a half a day of time to work through Second Step with Jackie and I kind of put together and helped to do. So they go into the program, they have some professional learning that's in there, and we make sure they have access and all the materials that they need to get started. So we do onboard everybody new on Second Step specifically. I can't speak for pre-Maria. I can say that's what we did in August, and it seems like the year before was pandemic year and it just kind of rolled out. So it probably isn't all that far off, but I can say the new teachers definitely have some training to deliver it.
So if a family came to you and didn't have a child in a grade level where it was available online, are you in the position to be able to say, here is our year's worth of grade, whatever, Second Step activities?
Through open records, yes. I feel strongly about that.
So I want to be clear, like nobody's hiding anything. So it's, anybody can access this.
Well, and I think
Through
that's
you.
correct, and I
Through
think
request.
through a request, through an open records request, but I think what I'm hearing is I don't want a parent to have to work that hard. And as much as I can,
understand that.
that's what, yeah, we shouldn't have to be able to, so.
Necessary fear that.
Correct, yeah, we're not hiding anything, correct. We're not hiding anything, so. No, so I'm going to reach out to Second Step and see what more we could possibly put on to elaborate a little bit. I know I know it was brought up that our primary school, our kindergarten through 5th grade program is from 2011 because it was the kit-based program. And so we bought kits for every teacher who was working with it. That was from 2010, 2011, when that was. With the pandemic, they have created online kits for which are updated at 2021 for primary school, kindergarten through 5th grade. So that'll be something that we'll take a look at to see if that's something that we want to transition to. But again, that'll be for a different time because it is a little bit different because they were able to, they, again, had a chance to redo the lessons and to present some things, but again, we'll take a look at what we can do, think about possibly moving that way, if in fact that's something we want to do as a district too. So, but the primary school is a little bit more kit-based, so that's a little bit more, it's not as digital as what is at the 6th or 8th grade level.
One last thought, and I know this isn't an action, I mean, we're not voting, but I feel it necessary to say, as a district, we need to be committed to what we have stated, our curricular direction and examination of curriculums is and what that cycle is. Because families, community, staff, students need to know what to expect. And we are thrilled to have Maria here, and she's worked so hard to get us going where we need to be, and everybody's working really hard and buying in. I just feel strongly that we need to be consistent with our focus. Does that make sense? Because not that this conversation isn't valuable, because it is, and all conversations are valuable and hearing from everybody, but we can't lose time, our one finite resource, chasing things that may not align with our larger objective.
Well, and even in terms of the efficacy of the program or value of, this particular curriculum that we chose at the time, we're a year and a half-ish into it, so even judging, is this a good program or not, it takes a year just to work through it once. Then the second year you say, oh yeah, I remember doing that. We're going to tweak it a little bit because that, collectively as a group, right? We're going to say, oh, hey, Jackie, like this didn't land in 3rd grade. Can we do it a little different, right? That's year 2. Then year, 3, 4 is when you start to actually see the effects of what you've been trying to do. I think it's only fair to at least, stay on that curriculum cycle. And when it comes back up, if we all say, hey, second step just sucked, we should not use it anymore. Cool, let's do something else. But right, just throwing it out now, it seems premature, I guess. We've already invested the time and the resource.
I heard it's the will of the board for me to come back to student achievement with ways that could be measurable. Is that
I understand what you're saying, that it does take, you build momentum every year, I get that. I think it is reasonable on anything to periodically, and I understand that this one probably is a little bit more difficult than others to measure, but I think it's reasonable when you purchase something and do something to say, is it being effective? Now, how we determine effectiveness is, I'm gonna lean on you because you're the professional, but my opinion is, I think it's reasonable that along the way, you are looking at it and saying, to your point, did this work? This didn't land well. That's a measurement.
Sure.
That is a form of measurement. So my 2 cents is I would love to be able to look at that. To your point, then we have multiple years of kind of looking at it on how we do that to be able to then go back to something AJ said earlier, which was reviewing things periodically to determine, is it the best? Is there something newer out there that's better, that's going to be more dynamic? I think that's just reasonable and rational. As a board member that's representing everybody in the community, I think it's reasonable. If I'm outvoted at some point, I'm outvoted. That's how that things go.
As Dave pointed out, it's going to be qualitative measures, right? It's going to be subjective, most likely. Right. But it's still valuable in tracking that so that we have some idea.
okay? So I think I heard from 3. I don't know, Lindsay, if you want to chime in. So I will. That's more than enough for me to go through and work with Jackie to come back with some ideas for student achievement in April.
And I'll be looking to see what we can do to enhance the transparency to make sure what, from a communication standpoint, as well as what we can promote on our website so parents can find information released to as well. And then
Can I ask one quick question about it? If there is a topic that a parent isn't comfortable with, just like human growth development, we get a letter home and we can decide if our kid is part of that. Is that the same, especially when you get to the upper grades? I don't know which one to look at.
Yeah.
Are parents allowed to opt out of a certain part of the
There
program?
currently is no passive consent option or letter associated with the program, or one that we've done.
Okay.
What is allowed and not allowed, I don't know if I don't know.
But nobody's gonna, I mean, in asking, can I opt out? Well, the answer is yes, nobody's gonna force your child.
Right.
To sit through something, so whether there is the consent or not, you know, whatever's being taught that day, that's absolutely right.
So I think that the difference is state law requires human growth and development to have I mean, it's very clear in law, opt out. I would say CEL is very different as far as understand we don't have standards. However, the board did approve a curriculum adoption. So I think we don't have anything that we would normally have in place, just like we wouldn't for, math or other content areas. It doesn't mean that we can't, but I just want to keep reinstating human growth and development is very different as far as what the law, what they have in law about how that committee's run, how we do with parents, how we include community members. I mean, it's prescriptive to, you have a pastor. I mean, it's prescriptive of the people that make up the committee, the people that choose the things, how parents do have an opinion to opt in or opt out. It can be either way in districts, but that is very specific to that just one content area only in law.
I can follow back up with you if you'd like. I kind of think of it as another controversial topic. Evolution in the science classroom. Global warming, anything, I mean, anything, hopefully we want to be able to make sure that we communicate with families, clearly about what it is that we're expecting. And kind of like what Katie said, if there's sign your child out, or again, I don't know what the state statute would be outside of what Maria was referencing. So I can dig around to that too as well. Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay. First draft of the new proposed social studies.
Yep. So I guess here's an opportunity if the board wanted to share anything or have any questions for Maria. We've had a couple runs at it already. If there's nothing, again, please feel free to reach out to Maria. In April, hopefully we'll be bringing it forward. So just let us know. We'll answer any questions you have. Okay.
Future agenda items and meetings.
So April 25th is our next scheduled board meeting. We'll be reorganizing. We will have an election in early April. We've got a final review of social studies curriculum. The other piece that we are going to be bringing now, since the board seems to want to move forward with our recommendation to bring world language to 6th grade, that we will be presenting a world language curriculum to as well, to the Student Achievement Committee, then ultimately for the first reading at the board level as well. So then we've got our May 23rd, which is the Monday before Memorial Day. And then just something to think about, if in June, I'm not sure what everyone's schedule is in June. Katie's smiling right now.
Whatever she wants.
So just to think about the last Monday in June is June 27th, last Monday in June is June 27th. So we could maybe hold that date, or does anybody have plans they know they're going to be gone already? And does that mean you're here or you're gone?
I can either confirm or deny that.
Okay.
No, I will not be in town that day.
Okay, so maybe we should shoot for the 20th? The week before? Well, right, but I mean, something to think about. Maybe I'll pull the board and see what we can find for June. Maybe tentatively we'll put down the 20th. If that's something that, yep, I'm seeing some head nods. So we'll go with the June 20th and we'll start with that. There you go. There you go. Okay. That's all I have outside of, closer down.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second. Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Everybody. The board does have to meet in closed session.